We the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this very important broadcast, exclusive discussion with our Paddy King. In our lineup today, we'll be talking about the genocide in Ambazonia, elections, Nigeria, how power change in Aso Rock could affect the Gulf of Guinea, and what does Ambazonia has to learn from it. What lessons do we take from Nigeria's election? What is the inspiration we're getting from the Nigerian youth? Very importantly is the aspect of the genocide in Ambazonia, where we now see Cameroon purporting that the war has ended. They are now trying to intimidate our people, showcase images of them, manipulate them. They have three strategies. They intimidate, manipulate, or eliminate. And if they fail in any of this, they will only have a free Ambazonia. In fact, they have failed in all of this. This generation, the never again generation, is not that generation that will be intimidated, manipulated, or eliminated, or annihilated by this genocidal regime of Paul Biya B. Mvondo. I have with me today in our talk, or as commentators, Barrister Fru Johnson, Barrister Tim Meseha, SOS Zama. You know, we didn't have defense briefing this evening for reasons difficult with those who were supposed to host it. It's like they had some emergencies. So we'll be having the Secretary of State for Special Operations and Defense come to give to us some briefings of what has been happening this week. The first few minutes we'll have that. Unfortunately for him, he has on the panel Barrister Tim Meseha and Barrister Fru Johnson. Barrister Ghana Valentine has promised that he will be joining us much later because of the importance of this discussion. So we look forward to seeing your participation. For all those following us on Facebook, on YouTube, and all our social media platforms, if you're not a club member, today is your day. It's an opportunity for you to become a club member. Subscribe is very easy. Our website is user-friendly. If you want to become a patron, indicate to us, send us a message on info@abcambatv.com, and we'll reach out to you and enroll you as a patron. We also want you to know that Undaunted is celebrating 1 year, and we're calling on all Ambazonians to come up with their ideas. You can send to us suggestions via our email on the page, on our page on Facebook. You can send to us what you think about Undaunted. What's your opinion so far? We would like to get audio testimonies from those particularly at the home front. We'd like to get video testimonies globally from all around the world as we are planning the date. When we arrange the date for this important birthday celebration of Undaunted for the never again generation, we'll announce that one of these days, but we're consulting with stakeholders of ABC Amba TV, the Office of the President, and the government to schedule that date. A lot of activities. We're at war and we are at rush. Last weekend, Ambazonians came out in their numbers and donated one night close to $30,000 for the federal government draft. That was impressive. The president believes that Ambazonians can do more. You did that not because somebody whipped you, not because someone manipulated you, but because you believe in a vision that you've seen and that works. It is the vision of a visionary leader, President Samuel Ekomesako. What lies ahead is some of the questions that we will be deserving answers from the panelists that are here this evening. Unfortunately for us, we have the right men in charge to tell us what we should expect as we Ambazonians come together to put our resources to fund our movement for total liberation. All right, after this break, we will come and start and kickstart this discussion. Stay tuned.
We the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
The evil spectre of rape. It crawls in the dark, its victims by stealth. It hacks. We saw it, we watched it. 11th February 2023. That night, the killer without a face broke brutally into the Ambazonians' consciousness, evoking hate and distaste. Its form was crude and callous. We were enraged, dismayed. Genocide was the topic that night. Like the executed, gathering minute details of his own execution, we listened to the horrid story that makes up our history, which, like a heavy cross, we keep dragging behind us. Tears welled up in our eyes, glistering like fireflies in the dead of night. Then suddenly, shrieks and loud wailing pierced through the silence, arresting our attention. An impromptu group surged to investigate. There were sobs. There were cries that cut through the heart. Then the young lady said, "I have been raped." A gasp went through the crowd and hung in the cloud. She stood in full view of all, a girl of 17, mother of a newborn child, still breastfeeding. She told of her fruitless efforts to beg the state's officer, a man fully clad in La République's state uniform, out in the field to protect the state's citizens, not to molest her, to listen to her concerns, and to respect her. But this state officer, a hyena in state uniform, an opportunist with no modicum of decency, grabbed and dragged his unwilling prey at gunpoint into an inner office where a state senior officer was waiting. He raped her with a gun pointed at her head. This daughter of Ambazonia, her world closed in upon her. It came crashing down at her feet, her tears coursing down like a stream. This was death. She was inconsolable. Friends and sympathizers talked of calm. To a desolate child, her heart torn in the frantic effort to articulate her predicament. This woman was alone in her loneliness, the embodiment of a multitude of women the world over, silent victims of the horror of rape. Can they eradicate their wounds engraved in their hearts? Those graphic memories that hurt like jagged swords and cling like the stench? She had been made into a shadow. In her, we have met them all, the traumatized, the degraded, the humiliated victims of rape. The girl felt dirty, like a handbag drawn out of a pit latrine. Words to articulate the unexplainable escaped her. Sympathizers, there were in plenty. Yet alone she stood, her memories racing like mice on a clean floor and pulling her mind apart. Her own body had of a sudden turned into an object of hate. Her concept of society, now a valueless construct. her destruction was complete. Threatened with death, she now lives with death. Gladly will she eradicate every sense of that loathsome experience to live again. Don't cry, they said. Ah, yes, let her belt it out for women's freedom's sake. She, the embodiment of millions of degraded women. Rape is the encounter that despoils a woman of all that she is. But be of good courage, daughter. The end is not yet. Ambazonia will never forget. God, your creator, knows you and your worth. He will visit you with joy and many others with you. By Ma Eli Jambelele. The evil specter of rape. It crawls in the dark. Its victims by stealth. It hacks. We saw it. We watched it. 11th February 2023. That night, the killer without a face broke brutally into the Ambazonians' consciousness, evoking hate and distaste. Its form was crude and callous. We were enraged, dismayed. Genocide was the topic that night. Like the executed, gathering minute details of his own execution. We listened to the horrid story that makes up our history, which, like a heavy cross, we keep dragging behind us. Tears welled up in our eyes.
Thank you, Ma Eli, for that insightful poem there on behalf of our raped sisters and mothers and wives. Thank you. You're always there to fill in the gap. We had a little technical error there, and there was some kind of a break in our transmission. But thank God we're back. I'm calling on those. It's just we're live now, 15 minutes. I'm calling on those who are watching us on Facebook and on YouTube. to share and invite as many people as possible so that we can start this discussion. I wouldn't waste one more minute of your time. I think I have all those who would like to be here with. They're here with us, Barrister Team, Barrister Fru, and Ezo Ezama. Good evening, gentlemen. You're welcome.
Thank you
Good
very
evening.
much, Paddy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is an obvious statement we have been making. You saw in our caption, we said Ambazonia suffers violence and violence takes it by force. It's an obvious caption that perhaps only Ambazonians are using it globally. The media has intentionally denied to identify whatever is happening in our homeland as a genocide. As we progress with the discussion today, what we'd like to know is that very basic definition of a genocide and how and why the war in Ambazonia is actually genocide against the peoples of the former British Southern Comoros. But before then, we have the Secretary of State for Special Operations and Defense, Sylvester Zama, who is here this evening to brief us on the status quo, the ground game, on our effort to defend our homeland and to actualize our restored independence. Good evening and welcome, SOS.
Thank you, Paddy. Thank you very much. Um, Barrister Mbesi and Barrister Fru, good evening. Um,
Good evening.
I want to thank all of our viewers, and at least we want to give you a little bit of a briefing regarding what's going on Ground Zero on the home front. Um, the war is raging on. We've been striking a lot of terror in the La Republic Army. They're very worried, and they've resorted to the tactical and very ingrained system of La Republique, bribery. They cannot beat us tactically on the battlefield, so they are going behind to bribe some of the feeble hearts in this fight. And some of our soldiers have been running from the battlefield with our equipment to the enemy. But we want to make sure, and we want to tell La Republique, it's not going to happen in the sense that uh, this war is a war of attrition. It's a war that was brought onto us, and we have the right reasons why we should fight this war. And no matter how many people he bribes or they bribe, that will not stop the cause of the Anglophone. That will not change the calamity that's been happening in Ambazonia. And that will not change the situation of our citizens. So that bitterness and that vengeance is there, and it will continue to be there until everything that we want is addressed and addressed appropriately. We are in this war, and it's raging on in every little area in Ambazonia, in Victoria, in Boya, in Victoria, where they thought it was a bastion. It was a fortress that no soldier could be able to attack there. We are making strides in that area. We are making strides in Boya, in Manyu, in Lebielem, in Ngoketunja, in Furawa, in Mezam. We can go on and call all 61 counties, and there's an issue that's involved in there against the enemy. So we are asking our citizens to bear in mind to stay safe and support your troops out there, be their eyes on the ground, inform them on where the soldiers are coming, when they are coming, and we will have this thing wrapped up in another year.
Okay. Thank you very much. I understand that you, as a technician in the game, you always advise the fighters as much as possible not to jeopardize their safety because they want to provide for us images. But you see, these fighters, irrespective of the risk that it takes for them to calculate and take off the enemy, they would still give to us beautiful images. I wouldn't call these amateur images. I call them professional images. There's this man from Ngoketunja, to be precise. He is simply an exceptional. That is FM Sagon. And let's watch this clinical action from him. Right after that, we'll get on with a very important part or aspect of our discussion. Stay tuned.
And then this comes on. And then this. One. FM Sagon. In the Endeavor Road. Two. Oh. Baleto. Patuma. Yorai.
You just saw that there. Is coming in from General Sagon. I know we're all proud of him. Sylvester, before I get to you, Barrister Team, Comrade Zama, please. When you see this, you're not going to tell us how you trained them. How do you feel, owing to the fact that just a few days ago, the French Cameroon occupational administration looked us into our eyes and told us, we're going to wipe you out in 2 weeks. How do you feel?
Well, the 2 cubes of sugar has become marbles, and marbles don't get dissolved in water. They're gonna swallow it or spit it out at this point. We are in this war because they drew us into it, and we're gonna fight until they leave. Either they leave us voluntarily or they will leave in body bags. That's the decision it's come to. We are not civilians. Civilians are being attacked by them. But we are not. We've not done that. We've not extended a barbary towards their civilians in Ambazonia. The Francophones in Ambazonia have none of this about the 6th year of this war. Not a single Francophone has been attacked or killed in Ambazonia. That should tell us a lot about the people we are. We want to make them to understand that we are not as barbaric as they are, but we will go after their soldiers as ferociously as we can. And at any given corner they are, we will attack them. And we are attacking them like you showed on that video. It's a clinical attack that was done, all military targets, which are legitimate targets under the Geneva Convention. The people, the soldiers and the people of Ngoketunja have been supporting their citizen fighters for a long time, and they've been perfecting and training on how to use this equipment, given the limitation that we have with the embargo from Nigeria, from providing us with anything that we need. But we will get to La Republique at all costs. If we have to claw with them with a claw hammer, we will do that. But at the end of the day, La Republique has to understand there is no place for them to hide in Ambazonia. We have 8 million eyes. If at all they've driven away 1 million of us, they have 7 million eyes watching at them. And there's no place to hide for them. We will come after them and they will notice us. And I tell our soldiers, they don't have to broadcast their pictures. We will know. You cannot hide a fire like that. You cannot hide an explosion like that. The soldiers will themselves be putting those things on social media. They've been good at hiding our corpses or their corpses, but they are not good at hiding large vehicles, 5 and 10 ton vehicles. They can't hide that. It's just impossible. At this stage, we will keep doing what we do, and we will degrade most of their equipment. We will bring them to submission by increasing their cost of fighting this war in Ambazonia.
That's quite amazing. The point is, this is not happening in just as we speak. The year is just getting into the 3rd month, and we've seen from January into February, every day in every county, there is a clinical action from the Amazonian Restoration Forces. Where I want to get with the lawyers now is your word, I quote, legitimate target according to the Geneva Convention. Barrister Team, Besea, you would be the best person to begin. Barrister Fro, I know.
We're lucky that this is 2023. But before 2023,
War is not a new thing.
Mhm.
War has been fought all over the world for many centuries. And war has become properly regulated under international law.
Mhm.
When you go out to fight a war, you have to obey the rules of war.
Mhm.
And clinical precision is what you're supposed to be trained when you go to the military school.
Yeah.
You don't shoot at random with the hope that you will be probably pick one your enemy. No, you shoot at a precise point, a military target, because a war is military against military. It's not military against civilians. And so when
Yes.
you get trained legally, or
Mhm.
when you get to war legally, you must be able to know what war is. War is not killing your enemy's people. War is killing your enemy's soldiers. War is downgrading your enemy's military hardware. It's not targeting the population because the population is not part of the battle. So when you see the precision with which Saigon has done, that's just an example. In a regular army, and I hope he is going to enjoy that facility, that man is going to be promoted to a special status, a general, I don't know what super general. Because what is his target? He's targeting a military vehicle. I make sure it is only the military vehicle that is targeted. Nobody else, not a passerby. Unlike what we find in La Republic. They come into a town, they burn down the whole village in the hope that if they kill 20 people in the village, they might probably kill one enemy, one amber fighter. And so, legally, what this guy is doing without a formal military training, as compared to what we find in the Republic's military, is something which is commendable. I wish the Republic could learn a lesson. I wish you could go to him, to his own school of training, and then they will know how to fight the war. You see, war is not only fought between two nations. There are wars that are fought within a country. And if you are fighting a war between in your own country, take for example the war against Boko Haram, that's a war. That's a war. Let me just say in Nigeria. But Nigerian military is not going to go out and shoot everybody in that state and kill in the hope of getting the enemy who is Boko Haram. In Afghanistan, you're not going to kill everybody in the hope of getting the Taliban. That's a war within one country. So the laws of war are international. They guide the wars between countries. They guide civil wars. There's wars within particular communities themselves. And so legally, this man and these people, this man in particular, we've seen, and the people like him are better experts in war, better experts in the profession than the the unkempt, the primitive people will face as opponents in the Republic of Cameroon called soldiers. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if you can actually hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I
we
get
can
you.
hear you.
Okay, we just getting some issues there and some things are being frozen on the screen, but I'm grateful that you can at least hear me. This is amazing. Barrister Fru, please. I know you have a lot to say, but let me add something to what you will say in this aspect. Despite that, you've had, despite the level of professionalism that has been exhibited by those who have not been trained, rightfully expressed by Barrister Team, we still have Cameroon using terms like terrorists. We saw them in 2017 beheading Sam Sawyer on camera. That's an ISIS like form of execution, which is prohibited. We have seen their proxies behead people. It's not the first time La République du Cameroon has beheaded. And you see, it's so enjoyable that we would have boys that have not been trained they don't attack La République du Cameroon citizens that are even enablers in Ambazonia. That's why I think that those who attack our citizens, so-called Amba boys, are agents of La République du Cameroon. Because if we are prone to attack civilians, the first civilians we should attack are the Bulus, the Mfangs, the Dualas, and the Bamis that own Tontus that are in Amazonia. Please talk to us, sir.
Yes, thank you, Paddy. You see, we did not declare war on these people. Before they even declared war, they started killing our people. You remember the killings of the 22nd of September 2017. You remember the killings, more especially of 1st October 2017, where La République used helicopter gunships and mow down our young people, both men, women, and children. And up to that, Mr. Biya had not declared war. He finally declared war on our people on the 30th of November 2017. And before I continue, I'd like to congratulate the military team for training our people to respect the Geneva Convention, which is the rules laid down by that convention during any conflict. Those rules are meant to protect the population. And I'd like to further congratulate our Ambazonia restoration forces, because all through these many years of fighting, we are in the 6th year now, almost going to the 7th. You have not heard that the Ambazonia restoration forces attack and kill civilians, both in La Republic or in our homeland. No. They make every effort to defend our people. They defend the population, the vulnerable population, women and children. They defend the old and the young. They make sure that La Republique does not get to them to annihilate them like they have done. You see, genocide in Ambazonia is a very, very serious matter that the international community, for whatever reason, has failed to take cognizance of what is happening in Ambazonia. When it happened in Rwanda, they said never again. And it is happening in Ambazonia, and nobody thought of never again. Is it because Kofi Annan is no more? Well, the Secretary General of the United Nations has buried his head in the sand, and nobody has condemned the genocide in Ambazonia. When they talk of genocide, Paddy, let me try to give the definition. When in a war situation,
Vice Fru,
not even a
Vice Fru, please. I'm not cutting you short, but you know, I want our people really want to learn this, and we want that we can crop it and send it to the international community. Let us digest these groundworks that our people are doing a little bit. And when, because I understand Sylvester Zama has just about 20 more minutes to be with us. When we would have digested it, we'll get into this educational part of the program. I have a lot of videos actually showing La République du Cameroon citizens attesting to the fact that this is really a genocide in our homeland. Go ahead, please, sir.
Our people who have never been trained, we don't have a trained army. It's actually volunteers from the population that have taken upon themselves, young people from the population that has taken upon themselves to defend our population and the homeland. And they are doing such a marvelous job while respecting the rules of engagement. And that is why I started by congratulating SOS Zama for the good job that they have done in training and asking and making them make sure that they respect the rules of engagement in any war. They respect the Geneva Convention. They do not violate the human rights of any population, whether it is the enemy population or our own population. And it is a never seen type of war, except when it happened in Vietnam, that untrained civilians have taken to defend against a well-structured and a well-armed army of a country that decides to unleash terror on a population of people, on a particular group of people, because of who they are. Because of who they are. And these young men and women who have never been trained, they don't even know how to handle the gun, but they have, over the years, over the period of this conflict, we started with sticks and cutlasses. They have learned how to handle the gun and to respect the rules of engagement. And I tell you, it's a record that the defense team of this struggle will have to take a lot of credit. Because if this thing was in other situations, we will not be talking, because we would have lost almost all the young people in our territory. For example, recently, about 2 or 3 days ago or so, the enemy troops went into a village and collected more than 45 young people for no reason, for no other reason, in Mato, for no other reason but for the fact that they are young people living in that village. They collected them. Up to now, I have been trying to find out, we have done all the kinds of calls to find out where they took them to. Nobody even knows where they took them to, whether they are now killed and buried in a mass grave. And we are calling on the villagers of that village, if there are any more left, women and men and the older people who were not taken, to find out where these boys and girls were taken to. And if they have not seen them and they can locate where they were killed and buried, it will help us to inform the international community, particularly the ICC, of what has happened in Mato. And that is why, with what has happened in Mato, our people are still calm. They are still trying to find out where their children are. And the Ambazonia restoration forces have not gone on the rampage like La Republic would have done, because our people, our young boys and girls fighting, have learned how not to violate international law like the Geneva Convention. And that is why you see, I am still to see anybody who will accuse the Ambazonia restoration forces for violating anybody's rights. I know propaganda, La Republic propaganda, has put a lot of rubbish out there, but it doesn't check. It doesn't add up. It doesn't check out. What I'm saying is, our people have demonstrated such dexterity, such resistance, that is not seen anywhere in the world. And the international community is not even bothered about what is happening with our people. We have lost more than 45 to 50,000 of our civilians and young people, and we are not hearing any kind of concern from the international community. Well, we are on our own, and we will continue to defend our population, our people, our territory until last man standing.
Thank you very much. SOS Ama, you have just seen, in fact, we just saw a video as an overlay that it is not all about Gokkitunja. It is all across the national territory, including this mayhem that is caused on our people in Mato. I understand one of the reasons Cameroon is doing that is probably to intimidate the young men, because our people are victims of circumstance. We are an endangered race of people. There's no doubt about that. But they just want to eliminate all our young men. You need to tell us what you're factoring out with your people to do. We understand that a certain general, which should be one of yours, they are purportedly coming for escaped, and so all the young men were unshacked and they have been disappeared. Can we have any updates on that from defense?
Paddy, we know La Republic, after facing several attacks, deadly attacks in Bali. They've gone after Grandpa, and Grandpa has been able to elude them. And they've been rounding up young men in every community. For anybody who still doubts that this is a genocide, I want just to give a common 3 or 4 characteristics of a genocide, and that is persecution, discrimination, polarization of that community, dehumanization. They've called us rats, they've called us roaches, they've called us, we should be exterminated. And all those things
Yeah.
are things that are characteristics or prime factors of genocide. The world is not looking at what's going on in Ambazonia, and I tell citizens of Ambazonia, it's our fight. We cannot lay the blame on Bamuna or Bafoncha or Indelo. This is our fight to fight. It's a fight that was brought to us, and it's an existential fight. What they do mass depopulation of areas in the northern zone and southern zone, and then they have to bring in people. Of course, these soldiers, when they come, they don't leave. They only leave when they are in body bags. When they come in as individuals and they can walk, they stay. They don't leave. So we have to start by bit by bit, they change the population makeup of those communities, and it just becomes natural that it's acceptable that the Ambazonians should be subhuman, Ambazonians should be second-class citizens or no humans at all, and they are not given human attributes because they've called us dogs. They've called us dogs with rabies, which is even worse. But we haven't reacted the way that they want. I think from the calculation and what we see in this, what they do, they are trying to push up to a point where we're going to start attacking francophones in our area, and it's going to be an all-out slaughter. We are not going to give them that pretext. And I think that's why we keep telling our soldiers and our citizens, calm down, we will go after the perpetrators and not the citizens of this area. Any citizen that becomes an intelligence officer for La Republic is a legitimate target. We will not regret doing that. And we tell people, if you don't want to be on, you don't want to fight the war, stay out of the war. So far as you become a party to it, you'll be targeted. And I think that's why our citizens haven't been able to do that. But we don't know with our capability how much we'll be able to hold back our citizens. I keep saying that the pent-up anger is like water behind a dam. And sometimes when there's a crack in that dike, there's no way to control that. We don't want it to come to that point. That's why we lecture our citizens every single day on Saturdays in the military briefing. That stay calm, do what we must do, don't do anything out of the ordinary. But that does not mean that we cannot be barbaric as they are. We are just telling them that we could do that, but we choose not to. And we are telling our citizens to be mature, politically mature enough, given that we were the first country in Africa to be granted political liberty to do our own assemblies. I think we are one of the oldest independent
First
countries.
country that demonstrated some democracy, went
Yes.
into a democratic election and
Yes.
power.
So we are very much more politically mature than the infants in East Cameroon, and I think that's where our people are showing that, and we are not vengeful to their citizens. But I don't know how long that will hold, because there are families that have been wiped out. There are 2 or 3 people who are remaining, and what are you gonna do? You've lost your whole life, and there are some people who want to do some crazy stuff, but we are trying to hold them back. But it doesn't mean that we cannot be crazy like they are. We could be worse.
This is quite amazing, and I would say your comments are just timely. We're having someone on this platform who has dedicated a much part of his life. That's Barrister Ghana, Valentine Ghana, that most of you already know him. A much part of his life to study how Ambazonia can effectively and legally free herself from Franco-Cameroon hegemony and annexation. Mr. Ghana, you most probably would have seen what the colonial forces of occupation did in Tarh. What would you advise this interim government in face of such cruelty and our people at the home front that are seeking to survive?
Thank you very much, comrade, and thanks to all our legal luminaries and also Mr. Zama, who is on, and thanks for the work that he's doing. It's kind of shameful, very shameful, that the international community watches with reckless abandon what the Republic is doing in Ambazonia. And you did ask a question, and the question you did ask is, what can we do to ensure that we liberate ourselves from the grip of this tyranny in La Republique? And a better way to answer that question first is to flip the question around and to ask the question of, is there any way feasible that La Republique can succeed in keeping Ambazonians in bondage? Is there any way feasible that French Cameroon, even supported by France, can seize and keep our sovereignty in perpetuity? And the answer is absolutely not possible. And when you look at the event that happened in Tarh, where the military of French Cameroon went and rounded young men and took them to an unknown destination, you see justification why our restoration forces exist. Because in areas where the military knows that they are going to receive return fire, they don't venture into those areas. In areas where the military knows that they are restoration forces and those restoration forces are heavily armed, they don't go kidnap civilians. So you can see that self-defense for Ambazonia first is a right. First, self-defense for Ambazonia is a right that has to be maintained, has to be sustained. And Ambazonians need to support the right of those on the ground, the right of our people living in that territory, and us in the diaspora as an extension of those people to and who are in proximity to those people to defend themselves from the genocide. I want to go back to an interview that was given to Colonel Anage. And Colonel Anage is a veteran colonel in the Cameroon army. He served for a long time, since from the 60s. He rose to the level of being director of EMIR. But for the fact that he was of the Ambazonian extraction, but for the fact that he's a Southern Cameroonian, he was never made general. But Dr. Colonel Hans Anage, who is currently in the Bingo Hospital in the vicinities of Bansor, was given an interview, I think, a few days ago, and I don't know if that interview is current or not. But he himself said, and by the way, Dr. Colonel Anage is also a fond of Ngwo, so pretty prominent figure. And he is one of those who helped quell down the rebellion by the UPCs in the 60s and 70s. And he said something that stood out. He said he never took the position of killing the UPCs. He never took the position of killing what they called then the Maquisards, because he saw them as his brothers. He saw them as his comrades that would work with him tomorrow to build the nation that he thought was. And Dr. Colonel Anage in that interview said, right now, he used to think that he was a Cameroonian, but he's not sure if he's a Cameroonian anymore. Now, that's somebody who rose to the rank of colonial, was director of EMIR. Some of these reckless generals who are committing genocide in Ambazonia. He trained them, but apparently that training went into them and went out without sticking in. And so if you look at the genocide that is happening, and if you compare it to what happened to the Maquisards, you can see that it's because they don't consider us part of them. It is because they don't consider us part of indigenes of what they call La République du Cameroon. And rightfully so, because we are not indigenes of La République du Cameroon. It's like if you go to the Muslim world and some extreme brands of Islam in areas such as Iraq, where they used to have ISIS, or in Afghanistan, where they used to have the Taliban, just modern Christians. Not for what they have done or not for the fact that they've done anything, but just because they are Christians. It's the same thing in Cameroon, where this rogue army being sponsored, equipped by France, is in southern Cameroon, murdering indigenous of the erstwhile southern Cameroon. And if you look at what is happening in Macho, it's a replication of what has happened over the past 6 years. We remember baby Martha, a 3-year-old in Moyoka about 3 years ago, where French Cameroonian genocidal troops went into her house with this little baby, innocent baby, sleeping on the bed, and unloaded about 12 bullets into her brain. We remember Mami Api, an 80-something-year-old grandma, great-grandmother, who was shot in the head. We remember the incident.
Barrister Ghana, I am not even cutting you short, but Ambazonians, we may just be talking, and you listen to some of these words, you would assume that perhaps we are making noise. You heard the name of Mami Api. Yesterday, when we had this image on air, Pastor Victor was literally crying because he understands the vernacular that and the incantation or the mournings that were coming from the very close relatives of this lady. I want you to just watch very closely and the story of Mami Api, whom I understand was crippled. Watch. Barrister Mbesea, maybe now that it is an Ambazonia thing, that this is a genocide, perhaps you want to solemnly tell us from the very basic understanding of it what a genocide is.
Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity. But before telling us what genocide actually is, let us have a reflection on history. Why genocide? You see, we talk about the Geneva Convention. It was signed in 1948. It came after the First and Second World War. And the First and Second World War, they call it World War. It involved almost everybody fighting. But there were people who suffered more. On the burden of the whole war lay. Among those people, the most important one were the Jews. Yeah, by the Nazi concentration camps, all those things that happened to them as a people during the First and Second World War prompted the passing of the Geneva Conventions against genocide. And because some of us, some Ambazonians, have tended to mislead us, the public in general. For example, here Dr. Monju said, no, there's no genocide, has not gotten to that stage. I want all of us to understand that those are just fabrications of a false professor. I'm not trying to insult him. He will better go back to read the Geneva Convention. In Article 2, it's so short. Article 2 that defines genocide. I'll just give you the components. What does it say? 1. Killing members of the group. 2. Causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to the members of the group. 3. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. 5. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Article 3 deals with how this complicity, assistance, and so on and so forth. That is genocide. But again, let us understand that in general terms, genocide is often committed by the majority against an armless minority. See, when the Jews were going through what they went, the Jews were a complete minority in Germany, and they thought they could do that to them and exterminate them and force them out of existence. That being the same thing, if you go to Rwanda, the Hutus and the Tutsis, it was the majority trying to oppress the minority. If you go to Sudan, there was genocide there. The president was charged for genocide and war crimes. It was the majority Muslims trying to oppress the southern Sudanese black people, Christians in general. And so it is used often by the majority to oppress the minority as a group. Given that definition I just gave there, do we fall on all fours? Yes. But we have been crying here. Well, the international community is not looking at us. This has not happened. History again shows us that all victims of genocide end up succeeding where they are. For example, back to the Jews again. After what they went through, nobody was thinking about an Israeli state. After what they went through during the First and Second World War, in 1947, the state of Israel was created. After they did order, the few who survived created, formed, and still rule the state of Israel. It is one of the most powerful states in the world. After what happened to these people in southern Sudan, after killing them, after making out of terrible things on them, southern Sudan emerged as a country. It was not the will of the international community now. It was the resistance of the people that caused the international community to say, no, too much is too much. And so you had asked the question, what else can we do? We can do everything. But the most important thing we must do is to continue the resistance. We believe that even if they kill all of us, a lone surviving Ambazonian will create the state of Ambazonia. And so that is genocide. Professor Dr. Anya Munzo, may he learn this if he had forgotten it. That is genocide. Genocide is not committed generally against other countries, no? It starts with the people of the same community. It starts with the people of the same community. When the Jews were living in Germany, they were just German Jews. There was nothing called State of Israel. When the Southern Sudanese were there, they were just Sudanese who were being oppressed. So to think that it's not a war because you are fighting northwest, southwest, no, it's a war. The definition of war is not fighting another country. These groups, targeting the groups exist within a country. And so, who would deny the fact that what Harrison said, helicopter gunships were used on people. Not just everybody, they were used on Anglos, they call it. What happened in Pinyin? It was not in Munda. Why Pinyin? Because the Anglophones, because of their resistance, they came there to kill everybody with the idea of silencing the struggle. Why Batibo? Why Kembang? Are these parts of the group called Anglophone and Cameroon? Of course. And so if someone is doing this against them, is it genocide? Of course. Is it a war crime? Of course. And the lesson we can take home from all this is that by the modern definition, genocide and war crimes are imprescriptible. You cannot say, no, it happened 20, 50 years ago, it's gone. No, it remains on you until the only thing that makes you get free is when you are dead. It goes to the grave with you. If after doing all this, you live your whole life without being prosecuted, and you die, you get free because we don't prosecute the dead. We don't exhume. But as long as you're alive, whoever is doing this thing on us in Yaoundé, and their accomplices, because Article 3 talks about accomplices. They are Tanganyikes who are helping them. Those are accomplices. And so it will be a wonderful earthquake to hear that all these people suddenly just die. They will die, but the few that will survive, I can guarantee you, as long as we keep this resistance going, they will have their day to answer for their crimes. And as Barrister Dana said, we don't just resist by talking. We are given the education. Put her in your pocket. Take your own spear. Take your own cutlass. Take your own stone. Those are all marks of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
What we are doing right now is our own form of resistance by educating our people. By telling the international community, you did not forget about the Jews. The international community after 1947 started recognizing the state of Israel in 1948. You did not forget Southern Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
You did not forget Rwanda. That way they said it never shall happen again. We keep reminding them. That might
You have not forgotten.
That might be a job and mine sitting here doing this, this verbal war. But again, Maapi is dead. Why do we even talk about Maapi? Because how was so heinous. Well, what happened in Garbo? They kill people and burn their corpses. So this has been so heinous, we cannot even be able to cite them. But good enough, I'm sure we have Ambazonians who are documenting these things. The day is coming. Paul Biya in his grave will go free. But as long as he's still breathing this human air, he might answer those questions for himself. Thank you.
You see, we've had Barrister Fru, we've had those who are supposedly Southern Cameroonians now enablers of the colonial government denying on camera that what is happening to their supposed people is genocide. An example is Monzo. Another example, most recently, is Agbobala, who is a learned colleague of yours. But even before, we see, we get into that as a betrayer of our nation. I like us to watch in French, a French Cameroonian describing the situation in Ambazonia. Stay tuned.
J'ai dit, ce n'est pas le MRC qui le dit. Ce qui se passe dans le nord et le sud-ouest aujourd'hui est un véritable génocide. Il faudrait qu'on ait le courage de le dire. Nous ne pouvons pas laisser nos frères continuer à mourir comme si c'était des petits poulets. C'est quoi ce pays? Quel est ce pays où nos dirigeants n'ont pas d'âme? Quel est ce pays où on prend du plaisir à tuer, à massacrer son propre peuple? Simplement parce qu'on veut à tout prix asseoir un certain pouvoir. Le pouvoir pour faire quoi? Si M. Biya, avec ce pouvoir depuis 40 ans, pouvait au moins améliorer les conditions de vie de Camerounais, on comprendrait. Je discutais encore hier avec un petit frère chez moi que ça. Je suis même prêt aujourd'hui au sacrifice suprême. Il faut dire la vérité aux Camerounais. Ce qui se passe dans le nord-est et le sud-ouest, là on n'a plus de réserve. C'est un génocide. Mais il faut le dire. Disons-le pour sauver nos frères.
Mais la question qu'on vous poserait, c'est si vous avez les preuves
d'une telle affirmation concernant les événements qui se déroulent dans le nord-ouest et sud-ouest? Vous savez, quand nous avons dit au départ qu'il y avait un problème anglophone au Cameroun, le premier qui est monté au créneau s'appelle le ministre Atangati, qui nous a dit qu'il n'y a pas de problème anglophone. Quand on a demandé
Barrister Fru, please.
Yes. All enablers, majority of enablers are accomplices to the genocide in Ambazonia. I cannot imagine that a junior colleague of mine called Agobala went on the air to say there was no genocide because our people are escaping from the genocide territory where the genocide is taking place and going into the enemy territory. That just tells you that he doesn't even know what genocide is all about. When this war started, all of Ambazonia, the southern Cameroon, there was no armed group. So the army came and was slaughtering unarmed people just because they are English-speaking southern Cameroonians. That is genocide, as defined. You just heard my senior colleague give you the definitions. There are 4 in number. And you can go through all the genocides that have taken place in Ambazonia, beginning from Gabu on the 14th of February 2020, I think. If you start from there, those children and those women and in that place were attacked by the Cameroon army with the complicity of nomads, the Bororos, who are nomads in Ambazonia. Those were the accomplices. They came and slaughtered children and women and men in the middle of the night. The world is still to pronounce anything on Gabu. Leave Gabu, you go to Santa, where they were accomplices, and I will name them, through Jonathan and Atanganji. They organized a group of young people, took them to a hotel, and called the Cameroon army. They came and slaughtered all of them. Unarmed young people who thought they were enjoying themselves in a hotel. All of them were mowed down. All of them were mowed. That is classical genocide. Okay, you go to Bali. You find that the army mowed down more than 60 civilians. Gathered the dead bodies, and burned them. They were killed because they were southern Cameroonians, and the army wanted to show their might on the civilian population. None of them was an armed any person. They gathered them and burned them to ashes. The pictures are there, Ambazonia, genocide-library.com. You go there, you will see all the pictures. You see all those that were mowed down, and they are lying in large numbers. Now, the world is watching and saying nothing. And listen, God, being the God that we serve, will answer these questions for us. Because it's already happening. It's already happening. The Lord is already showing what is going to happen next. But please, we were forced to defend ourselves, and self-defense is a universal right enshrined in the Universal Declaration of the United Nations. Human Rights Declaration of the United Nations. Self-defense. You cannot imagine that you come into my house and kill my wife and kill my children, and I have the way. I will not fight back. for you not to kill, including me. There are many cases of genocide. There was one towards after Kwakwa. You see, Mami Api. Mami Api could not run when they were burning down that village, and she was burned to ashes. You have seen the pictures. The whole village was flattened. That is genocide. Classical genocide. It happened in Kwakwa. It happened in Kembong. It has happened in many other places. It happened in Babakitumbo. And not only that, our children in St. Francisca in Kumba, in a school, and we can identify the two soldiers that were among those who were disguised and killed those 7 children in that school. What has international community done? Nothing. These guys themselves went to a condo titi and mowed down children in class and their teacher. Nothing happened. Nothing is happening. There are war crimes that are committed, crimes against humanity, like the shooting of the young Calorine in Boya, the shooting of the young Tato in Bamenda. Going to school and coming back from school is a problem for our children. Those are war crimes. What will happen for the world to know that genocide and war crimes and crimes against humanity are being committed in Ambazonia, the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia? What did we do to these francophones? What is it that we did? Like I said at the beginning of this, they started by mowing down our people with helicopter gunships in Boya and Bamenda on the 1st of October. For a political problem, they brought their helicopter gunship, supplied to them by the United States at that time. They mowed down our people, both in Boya and Bamenda. Our young children, young boys, young girls, and we lost more than 300 to 400 of our young people. And they seem to be a target, the young people seem to be a target for La République du Cameroon. Because everywhere they go, they gather young children, they either kill them and bury them in mass graves, or they carry them to their detention centers. That's why I brought the question of Mato. Where are these more than 45 to 50 children? Where are they? Where are they? Listen, I just had a story, and I have verified, and it's true. Somebody died in Nigeria. The body was brought into Tico, and when they went to the Tico mortuary, the mortuary was smelling, and the mortuary attendant told some person that he knew that for 1 week now, the Tico military brought a truck of more than 50 dead bodies, civilian dead bodies. And since the mortuary was full, they threw them on the ground and went away, and the whole of Tico was smelling. What did they do? They came back in the middle of the night, went behind the mortuary, dug a grave, shallow but big, and poured them inside and covered them. We know the grave. We know I can tell you that the mass grave is well marked, and we will have to include them among the mass graves that exist in Ambazonia. We were first armless. We didn't have any arms, and they started killing us, killing in numbers. When they move into Manu, you cannot imagine how many young people were mowed down within that week that the Cameroon armed battalion, moved into Manu. And
you see,
saying this, I'm just giving examples of some of the genocides that have taken place in Ambazonia. And I'm telling you that these issues are well documented. We did a job documented it and sent it to the ICC. And the ICC is now investigating. Whether they are alive or they are living, whether they are alive or they are dead, justice will be brought to bear when the time comes. Because it cannot go unpunished. If it goes unpunished, then this world will become a very wicked world. Because look at what the United Nations Secretary General is doing. Quiet. The Human Rights Commission in Geneva. Quiet.
That's quite unfortunate, Barrister Froome, because as we look at it, and I have a concern with that. You watch the French journalist there, when this individual was articulating the facts that whatever is happening in what they call Nonso, which is Ambazonia, is a clear genocide. The journalist asked a question which I think Barrister Ghana will answer. But before Barrister Ghana answers that, I want to come to you, Comrade Zaman. This journalist asked a question, and he said, "What is the evidence? You making such a declaration? What is the evidence?"
Before you go to Comrade Zaman, let me tell you that man who was speaking, just next to him is an accomplice to genocide.
It's
called Julius Atu. He's a lawyer, a CPD man in Douala, and has promoted genocide in Santa, where he comes from, and all over Ambazonia.
Yeah. So this is what I want you to come in with, as Barrister Ghana prepares to give to us in very clear terms the evidence we have. What is the level we have at the ICC? And some of these individuals will be dying soon, like Bia himself, who is the chief genocidaire, will be dying soon. So what is going to be the use of this case that we are filing against a man that is rotting vegetables? Now, SOS Ama, we now understand that the DDR centers are concentration camps, military training grounds, where they gain intelligence against us. We are told that one of the DDR candidates, Clovis, led the military to where they had to pick up these people. I don't need to ask you if that is a target, if you now know that the DDR centers are potential targets. What hope will you give to Ambazonians who are thinking that something should be done, and done very quickly, to stop this?
I think I'll go back to the genocide issue before I answer your question.
Yes,
if I can recall what was written on, I think this was a front page on Time magazine, I think in 1994, where they said there are no devils left in hell. The paper was quoting a missionary, because all the devils were all in Rwanda. We could say that today in 2023, that all the devils from hell are in La République. And we can see all the killings that's going on in La République. We can see all the killings of what their offsprings and soldiers are doing in Ambazonia. Going back to still talk about the DDR. The DDR was a decommissioning center that was supposed to retrain these soldiers to gainful employment. And of course, they could never have gainful employment, because the unemployment in Ambazonia was like 15, 16, 20%. Even those who were qualified, even those who were educated, never had any jobs. So it was just a ploy to get these young men to surrender the fight and come and be held in an open prison. The sad thing is, these kids who surrendered, thinking they were going to go into civilian lives, were commissioned forcefully, most of them against their will. Probably there are some of them, like Clovis, who is very vocal on Facebook and other social media platforms. And these are the people who are working with La République. He leads them. He's a good target. There's no mistaking of that fact. He is a leader of those groups that go into Ambazonia to kill young men and women. and parents and old people. In Ambazonia, we have him as one of our top priorities. We will have him. We will not take him anywhere. We will take him out in a battlefield where he always heads. He will be one of those people who will be taken out. And we are watching for him. We are listening to him. We see him, his activities all over the northern and southern zone. But when it comes to La Republique, we have to understand that this war is beyond them. They've understood that they bit just too much, and they could chew. Ambazonia is here to defend itself. We will do all we can. We will do all we must do. And in that respect, I'm telling all Ambazonians that it's a categorical imperative that every individual from Amazonia descent must contribute towards this war, because if we will be replaced. We will end up in open jails, or let me call them slave farms, like we are in Europe and America. We are here, and there are many people who will never go back, and that's not where we want to be. They will deliberately overpopulate our area, and if we ever go back, we will always be strangers in our own hometowns. So we are asking everybody who is watching this program and who has the time to even think a little bit. Where is your place in this world? Your place is not nowhere in London. It's nowhere in New York. It's nowhere in Detroit. It's nowhere in Paris. It's back home where you were born. And that's your hometown, where nobody will tell you you're a foreigner. Nobody will question what you are. But we have to defend that. We have to defend that turf. We have to defend that ground that we call ours. And it's upon you who is sitting there watching this show or not doing anything at all. We could do stuff as radical like the terrorist groups do, to harass people, take them hostages, and let their parents pay ransom so that we can fight this war. But we are much more civilized than that. I keep insisting on that word because we could go really, really, really extreme to do what we must do. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, freedom is for everybody. We cannot get freedom for one part or some people and not for others. So, as I said last week, it's the tapper always taps alone, but the drinkers are always many. So we have to do our part. We must do our part, as I insist on most Ambazonians. And it's going back to the gentleman who says, "What are the proofs of genocide?" I will just say, it's because not because he doesn't know the answer, it's because he knows too much. That's why he cannot even defend that position. And that's the problem with La Republique. And that's the problem with all the people like Monzo, like Bala and all that. It's because they know a lot on those issues that they don't want to talk on, and they claim to be ignorant. They are not ignorant like they think they are. We understand where the game is. We understand where they are. And please, let insist to Ambazonians that there is no cavalry coming to save Ambazonia. They've a lot of genocides in all over the country, in all over Africa. We sit next to Zaire. Zaire has lost more than 4 million people. Nobody's talked about it, or even more if you add the period of Leopold, the Belgian king. Nobody talks about that when it comes to minorities or Africans. We have to fight this thing ourselves. We have to do it out ourselves. And that's where we're asking for every individual to do their own contribution, to do their own knowledge, to learn, because a lot of our problem is out of ignorance. A lot of our citizens do not even understand the history of Cameroon. They don't understand the history of Ambazonia. They don't understand why we fight. They think, is that your thing? That Wuna thing. It's not that Wuna thing. Because everybody on every nook and cranny in Ambazonia has been affected. There is no little village that has not been raided. There's no little village that has not lost a young man, an old woman, an old man, or a child. We have all suffered that. And I think a lot of us are suffering from Stockholm syndrome, where we just like say, okay, let's just accept defeat. We should not accept defeat. We should not be condemned to a point where we have to accept our fate from our evildoers. All the little devils that are in hell are right now in La Republique, and we need to burn them off. We need to burn them off, and we need to burn them quick.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Ghana, I'm actually coming to you at a point which is best for you to really make a contribution. You see, at the end of the day, we are shouting genocide, genocide, genocide. People have heard it. some are being discouraged because they want some hope, they want some solution. And that's a journalist, maybe about 2 years ago, challenging a citizen of his nation and asking what's the evidence. Perhaps you've heard this question before, and I'm putting it back to you. Looking at Ambazonia today, what's the evidence that there's genocide? How or what should Ambazonians expect in a short and or long term from the ICC? ICC, I understand you were one of those compiling reports for the ICC. Talk to us kindly.
Comrade, the question that is being asked, or if that question is asked, that where's the evidence? I think uh, anybody who asks that question is just burying their head in the sand, because the whole of the southern Cameroons is a crime scene. And comrade, I really think that answering that question would attempt to take away from what Barrister Fulso elaborately said. And he did point to graveyards. We know where all of those graveyards are. We know where the bodies are buried. We know what has been happening in all of these DDR centers. Those are killing grounds for our people. We know what has been happening in the police centers in Bamenda, in Kumba, in Boya, in Manfe, all over Ambazonia, all over the southern Cameroons. So the evidence is so overwhelming. We have videos of our people who were taken out of Kondengi, murdered, and buried at a certain location in Yaoundé. We have the videos of the truck that was offloading these bodies that we're talking about. So the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And like you rightfully acknowledge, a complaint properly drafted, a 154-page complaint containing all of this evidence and containing the perpetrators of this evidence right up to the upper echelons of the Cameroon army. This have been submitted to the ICC. But we're not going to stop there. There are other things that are being done by the interim government, which we would not disclose right now. We continue to strategize, and there are a lot of other avenues available to us. And when I say there are other things that are being done, and you would find out about them, so we are not sitting and folding our hands, you know. But in terms of the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And the hatred that is being shown towards indigenes of Ambazonia. I mean, Barrister Fulso really elaborated the details of it. But look at it in Kendem, where soldiers from French Cameroon went and took a little baby by a stream where women were walking and milling oil. And when these ladies who were milling oil saw the French Cameroon army coming, in panic, they escaped. And what did the army come and do? They came and they saw a baby in a manger. And they took this innocent baby and threw the baby in a cauldron of boiling oil. What wickedness can that be? So where's the evidence? The evidence is pretty overwhelming. We had Congressman Ron Kine from Wisconsin travel to Cameroon, travel into Ambazonia in about 2018 or so, or 2000, yeah, on or about that. We have a video of it, where when he came back, he was pretty explicit about the killings that the Cameroon army was doing. We have that on a video, and Barrister Fulso and Barrister Mbesa, we have that video in a legal forum that we belong to. So where's the evidence? The evidence is pretty overwhelming. We have the former United States ambassador to Cameroon, Peter Ballerin, admitting of the atrocities that the Cameroon army is committing in Ambazonia, admitting in a video openly. So it is not a question of where the evidence is, but Paddy, these people will pay for their crimes, because we know who in the echelon of the Cameroon army is ordering all of these killings, and we have that documented, and we continue to enrich the information bank. These people think they are going to go free. Hell no, they are not going to go free. This same sort of thing was happening in Yugoslavia, where, again, like I think it's Barrister Mbesa who said, genocide always involved killings by part of the majority population on the minority population. We have the case in Serbia, where in about 1994, 1995, Serbians were murdering Bosnians and Croatians and Montenegrins. And they thought they were going to get away with it. And the file was opened up at the ICC, and a lot of these soldiers were arrested, including Milosevic himself, and tried at The Hague. So they think they are going to get away with this? Hell no, they are not going to get away with this. One thing that God has done is that God has blessed the Ambazonian diaspora with indigents from the southern Cameroons or Ambazonia who have accessed education, who have studied, who have gone into professions, who understand how to get this information and how to store it. And I tip my hat off to somebody like Brother Matt Atugon, who started the Ambazonian Genocide Library. And if you want to find out more about the repository of information about this genocide, go to www.ambazoniagenocidelibrary.org. And there you would be able to find information. I mean, a trove of information on the tens and tens of thousands of our people who have gotten murdered. So we are going to stand as the vanguard to ensure that all of these murders do not go free. And if they think they are going to get away with this, they are very wrong. Thank you, Paddy.
If I may add something to that, Paddy.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I think people who commit genocides never go free. We could see the case of in Cambodia when the Khmer Rouge, after 70 years, a lot of those who were still surviving were sent to prison after a long time. We could see the case of John Benyanyuk. He was a Nazi prisoner in Ukraine, who was here in the United States for 66 or 70 years. He was caught. He was sent to jail, and I think he was deported back to Ukraine. We have Mengele, all these people who think that they can kill people and the world will forget about it. There's one thing the world never really forgets, or one thing that never really dies in the world, it's history. People are going to pass it down. For those that cannot read, they will pass it orally, whatever happened, and it will stay like the rings on the tree. It will tell how this thing was done, when it was done, and by who it was done. So there's nobody who's going to be free with this, who's involved, who's had their hands tainted, and those of, especially those in our community who participate in killing our own people. I pray for them, and I pray for them to die in hell pretty soon, because this is not how we were brought up. This is not how an Ambazonian, given what we did, we went to schools, a lot of what went to parochial school and missionary schools, where good and evil were two distinct stuff that was taught on a daily basis. So we know what is good and what is right, wrong and evil. And they've chosen the wrong side of history, and I wish they stay on that side, because there will never be any coming back to Ambazonia.
That's amazing. Thank you, gentlemen. You've all elaborated on this subject of the genocide in Ambazonia very elaborately, and the world should know that if they choose not to communicate it, we have the duty I'm calling on all Ambazonians who are watching us right now. You agree that in sub-Saharan Africa, this is the only channel that communicates our story accurately. And that's why you have to be a part of the project of this vision to take our untold stories to the nations of the world. You can do so by becoming a club member. As you're looking at the news bar, you definitely see how to go to our website, how to become a club member. You can also do so by being a patron, by donating. It's important that you know that this is a war we're fighting, a media warfare. And I enjoy the fact that uh, uh, Barrister Besea was categorical and clear. He says this is our own defense, our own contribution we are doing to free our homeland, and it is our right to do so. We cannot be stopped. We should not be stopped by anyone. You want to go down history as that individual who participated in this great project. How do you want to put your name in history? That you looked at it and said that was nothing, or you looked at it, position yourself to participate with all your might to see that your people are free. It's very important. We, as the people of Ambazonia, have been watching very closely the elections in Nigeria of great interest, not just to the nation of the former British South Cameroons, as a
Just
very
one
close
thing.
neighbor to Nigeria. You want to say something, please?
Yeah, just one thing.
Okay, I'll give you
And
the floor to
as,
do that.
as I said before, in the United States, continental United States, that is the United States and Canada, in all of Europe, in some parts of the world, we have billionaires who are Ambazonians, and everyone is watching. They cannot even give a word of encouragement. Neither can they even feed the refugees in Nigeria, and they are sitting on tons and tons of money. Well, I am not here to judge anybody's moral upbringing or whatever, but I'm saying tomorrow, because I know Ambazonia will be free, with or without me or Bessa or Ghana alive or even Paddy alive, Ambazonia will be free. And when you come there as a billionaire, what are you going to tell the children who suffered from the war
Or the
front?
families who lost loved
And
ones.
the families slaughtered, the babies put in hot oil, the 4-month-old baby in Miyuka, baby Mata, shot with more than 11 bullets. What are you going to tell those families as a rich Ambazonian who has not taken the time to even give bread to a suffering child in Ambazonia, or bread to a suffering child in the refugee camps in Nigeria? Paddy, you can go ahead. Thank you.
That is very very good, and because you just gave us a transition into the next phase, which is what we're going to be talking about as we link it up with um, the elections in Nigeria, what is happening there. We understand that the international community has literally or strategically despised whoever INEC has announced Bola Tinubu as their leader. It's instrumental because not just Amazonia as a close neighbor is looking up to Nigeria to set precedents or some standards. The entire Africa is looking at Nigeria, who purportedly is the giant of Africa, to have a free and fair. But before that, to nail on this issue of genocide, we have a video again coming from a French Cameroonian citizen. This one is also, I think, he's in a parliament or something, also attesting. It's important that we play this for their own people to listen to it. Unfortunately, we have them in French. We'll do some efforts to get them in English. Their own people are attesting and affirming categorically in plain language that what their government is doing to our homeland is genocide. Right after that video, we'll come back to take our discussion to a whole new and conclusive level. Stay tuned.
La chose est simple, c'est que les promesses n'ayant pas été tenues, les anglophones ont été abusés. Voyez-vous pourquoi on en arrive à la République unie. Alors que la constitution de la République fédérale avait stigmatisé que la forme de l'État ne changera pas. La constitution le dit, que la forme fédérale de l'État, on ne la touchera pas. Il y a un article qui le dit. Malheureusement, on fait une autre constitution en 1972, en ignorant l'article qui a cimenté la relation avec le côté anglophone. La forme fédérale de l'État n'est pas susceptible de changer, n'est pas en débat. Et toute question relative à la forme de l'État est irrecevable. C'est écrit, noir et blanc.
Alors, Maître Momo, nous sommes d'accord avec ce que vous dites, mais dès le départ, quand même, il faut le dire, le Cameroun a été divisé à cause de la colonisation. Il y a eu la colonisation.
Oui,
voilà, dès le départ, c'était quand même un pays. Oui.
J'en viens, je dis quoi? Ça, c'est l'histoire. L'histoire, c'est que, bon, il y a eu les Anglais d'un côté, du côté anglophone, et les francophones.
C'est pas une mauvaise chose si on veut quand même réunir les deux parties.
Mais il y avait déjà l'unification. La fédération, c'est quoi? C'est l'unification. Il y a eu la réunification. Oui. La réunification, c'est en 1961. Oui. Mais la réunification sous la forme fédérale. Maintenant, en 1972, vous avez cassé, brisé cette fédération. C'est l'unification.
Oui, tout à fait.
Pourquoi vous pensez que la fédération, c'est une séparation? La fédération n'est pas séparation. Il y a eu l'unification, la réunification des deux États. C'est en 1961. Oui. Et donc, maintenant, en 1972, parce qu'on a trouvé le pétrole à Limbé, dans la partie anglophone, les Français qui étaient encore au pouvoir au Cameroun et qui sont toujours encore au pouvoir au Cameroun jusqu'à ce jour, ont manœuvré avec Aïdjo pour créer l'État unitaire en violation de la Constitution fédérale, en violation de l'article qui est le ciment, qui était le ciment de la réunification, pour pouvoir s'accaparer du pétrole de Limé. Parce qu'on a vu que alors que dans l'État fédéral, les biens de chaque État lui appartiennent. Comme je vous ai parlé des mobiliers de tout à l'heure. Ça lui appartient. Mais il y a une quote-part que vous devez donner à l'État, au pouvoir central. Or, en créant ex nihilo la République unie, ils ont avalé tous les biens des anglophones. Écoutez, c'est pas parce que je suis francophone que je vais faire la langue de bois. Il faut dire la vérité. On les a spoliés, on les a volés. La vérité, c'est ça. Et c'est clair. Ils demandent qu'on revienne au statu quo ante. Qu'on revienne à la constitution du départ. Qu'on analyse l'article inamovible qui était le ciment de la fondation de l'union. De l'union, parce qu'il y a union. Ne croyez pas, comme je vois dans le quartier, les gens pensent que le fédéralisme va diviser les gens. Mais les gens sont comment? Ils ne comprennent pas. C'est une union toujours, mais sauf que c'est la forme de l'État qui change, qui donne le pouvoir à l'État fédéral, aux États fédéraux, chacun d'avoir une certaine autonomie. Il n'y a pas un plus grand bien qui ne puisse arriver au Cameroun. Et d'ailleurs, c'est pour ça que les sécessionnistes ont dit. Ils ont dit, l'État fédéral ayant été dissous, l'État unitaire appartient maintenant à la France. Et ils appellent le pouvoir de Yaoundé le pouvoir colonial français. Et c'est vrai, c'est les Bolloré qui vivent ici, qui agissent ici. Vous avez une entreprise, quand on dit investissement, vous allez voir les Bolloré, ils ne payent pas les impôts ou ils payent moins, ils ne payent pas le personnel, c'est eux qui font garder le SMIC à peine à 35 000 francs ici, alors qu'ailleurs, juste ici au Gabon, en Guinée équatoriale, le dernier manœuvre est payé à 150 000 francs. D'accord? Donc c'est eux qui font ça. Et les sécessionnistes ont dit ceci. Vous les francophones, restez avec la France si vous voulez. Et laissez-nous. Ou si vous voulez qu'on continue ensemble, quittez la France-Afrique, quittez les Français, et venez, on construit notre maison sans eux. Est-ce qu'un discours comme ça n'est pas
Ça, c'est une
compréhensible?
information peut-être qu'on n'avait pas.
Oui,
supplémentaire.
c'est leur
Ouais.
discours, c'est le raccourci de leur discours. Il faut que les gens disent la vérité. La vérité, c'est ça.
This video is
Well,
quite interesting. I wish we could have played it
well,
all, but then I think
that's a
this
hypocrite.
this individual was talking at the time he was really hungry, because now
Yes,
the
he
good
was
thing is that
hungry.
we have this for prosperity, and nobody can wipe this from our screens. Now his tone has changed. But Mr. Ghana, please, I want to start with you. I understand that you might be leaving soon. You're a man always on the move. You've heard him. You understand French. Let's comment on it,
Mr.
all of us
Uh,
collectively together
uh,
before we even move to the next subject.
Paddy, let me just say something
Yes,
before
please.
we leave this topic, because
Yes,
we are trying
please.
to leave genocide. And I think there's something that we should not forget. You say,
Please.
also said something about that gentleman who sat next to that speaker. It's called Barrister Achu, I'm sorry. In addition to his acts in Santa and wherever he is, if he has read law, I will refer him to Article 3 of the Geneva Convention. 3B and 3C says conspiracy to commit genocide and the direct and public incitement to commit genocide. What Barrister Ashwood does all the time when he comes on those public shows is a public incitement to commit suicide. He's an accomplice in the acts in the crime of genocide. If he doesn't know it, I've referred the article to him. And apart from Mr. Achu, I would like people in Nambere to know, sources in government to know, and those in the DDR who are assisting the government, that they are accomplices to genocide. Accomplices, if found guilty, have the same penalties. And so you're not going to escape. Your presence in the DDR or your actions like Dr. Nkongo, success, Mr. Namere, and so whoever, you are accomplices. And I will add the next point. Say our case is not based purely on genocide. There's something called war crimes. I said earlier that war has been modernized, legalized, and rules have been put in place. What the evidence we have, not even from you and me, but from the Republic itself, talks of war crimes in addition to genocide. What will you do when somebody is lying in the hospital sick, even a soldier? Are you extract him or her from the hospital and shoot him to death? That is a war crime. This has been done, videotaped, video recorded by La Republique themselves. So, in addition to genocide, what we call war crime, there are so many. I'm just giving this as an example. And the third point, Secretary made, nobody is going to escape. All of you have your day coming. And the examples are not even so far as he has mentioned. Just look at our next door neighbor, the northern neighbor, or what they call the Republic of Chad. There was a president there called Hissène Habré, who committed war crimes, committed genocide against his own people. And when the coup came, he fled to Senegal. Where is he today? He's in prison for his acts of war crimes he committed against his own people. When he was charged in court, he refused to go to court. He claimed that he was sick. They came and carried him from his house to the court in Senegal, Dakar, tried him, and sentenced him to life. So Paul Biya will not escape. There's no hiding place where you commit these crimes or where you are an accomplice to committing them. So, Mr. Achu, Nambere,
Are you talking
and
about
the
the
rest.
phobia as a vegetable or another
So even
phobia?
if Paul ran to France, ran to Sweden, ran to Canada, the crime will follow you there. Paul Biya is a very big fish. There's no hiding place for Tanganji and the rest I've just mentioned. Your day is coming. I said this before. I was just trying to clarify this particular point. Thank you.
My only concern with your clarification is this: is it the same vegetable sporia that is suffering from advanced amnesia or
Well,
whatever?
it is same.
Barrister Ghana, do you agree with us?
Let me just finish. Let me just finish. I've mentioned to you that when they charged Hissène Habré in court,
Yeah.
he did not. He refused to go to court. He was sick. He's still old. They came and carry him on a
Carry him
stretcher and took him
from.
to court and
And he
sentenced him to
finally died.
life.
He finally
He's
died.
lying on his dying bed in the prison until he dies. That thing hangs on him. If he dies tomorrow, that's the end of it. And so,
He's
I
dead
really
already.
think
Mobia, it can be
that
peeing on his
will not
pants.
really benefit the nation of Ambazonia very much if the money that is in Brenda's account and Junior's account is still there, because that's our money. Barrister Ghana, please.
Yeah, when I listened to that gentleman speaking, and he was very vociferous in stating his point, it only points to one thing, and this one thing is being manifested in so many dimensions. It points to the fact that irrespective of how France and its proxy, French Cameroon, try to keep the annexation of Ambazonia in place, it will not work, because Ambazonians have been educated. Indigenes of French Cameroon also have been educated. That's a co-indigene of French Cameroon who knows the truth and is speaking the truth out at the risk of his own life. And is saying that we have wronged these people. We have committed genocide on them. And they are right to rise up, because we have confiscated or attempted to confiscate their sovereignty. He points to the federal constitution, Article 47, which says nothing should be done to change the federal character of the country. So
it should not be adulterated.
Yes, at whatever stage you want to look at it, if you want to look at it from the point of view that the United Nations in UN Resolution 1608 said, for you guys to become a federal country or for any union to exist, there has to be a meeting between the guardian authority, the executive authority, and French Cameroon, which never took place. So the conditions to even form a union are not there. So there is no union. Now, if you want to look at it from the angle that we went to Fumban, and because our leaders took positions in French Cameroon and we joined their parliament, and there exists what they call an interparliamentary union, then that interparliamentary union speaks of a federation which you have dissolved, thus returning the sovereignty of Ambazonians back to Ambazonia. So if you go through it to say there was a union creating a Federal United Republic of Cameroon, or Federal Republic of Cameroon as they called it, it was dissolved by them dissolving a constitution that says nothing should be done to change the federal character of the country. And that is why I say people of the French Cameroon echelon, the military, the politicians, France, they are wasting their time, because Ambazonia is an independent nation, and we are just asserting our freedom. And nothing can be done, not today, not tomorrow, not forever, to confiscate our sovereignty, because the sovereignty lies with our people. And there is no ad hoc meeting in Canada or ad hoc meeting someplace in the world that you pick a few individuals and try to negotiate away our sovereignty. Because at the end of it, the Ambazonian people own that sovereignty. So what I gather from that gentleman who spoke truth, that these people are right. There were two Cameroons coming from the Treaty of Versailles in 1919-1920, and the two of them became Class B trust territories under the League of Nations, and then
Mm-hmm.
under the United
Mandated.
Nations, confirmed in 1946 by the trusteeship agreements. Britain had a trusteeship agreement with the UN. France had a trusteeship agreement with the UN, reaffirming the fact that these were two Class B trust territories and each of them independent in international law, confirmed by UN resolutions 1514, 1541, and 1608. So that what that gentleman is saying is transparent truth under the very clear sun. So Ambazonia
So
is a
our
free
fight
nation.
today in our station, our fight is historical, it is legal. But it baffles me, Barrister Ghana, I'll stay with you. It baffles me that legal entities, globalization enabling framework organizations are quiet. You just heard Barrister Fru saying that the president of the United Nations is quiet. In fact, they are
Secretary General.
the Secretary General, they are quiet. And that is vexing to the soul. Barrister Ghana, please.
Yes, they are quiet, but our independence and our sovereignty does not depend on whether they speak or not. Our sovereignty depends on the rules of the international order that affirm that French Cameroon is a separate nation from Ambazonia. So whether they speak or not, whether they speak or not for the next 100 years, French Cameroon will never end up keeping Ambazonia. And that is why French Cameroon is running away from the negotiation table. They are running away from the Swiss talks. They are calling the Canadian charade talks about pre-talks. So they cannot commit because they know that they don't have any legitimate right to the sovereignty of Ambazonia. So what that gentleman is saying is just affirming the fact that we are an independent people and French Cameroon is an annexationist and a colonial invader and have absolutely no right to the Southern Cameroons. And it shall come to pass that Southern Cameroonians, that Ambazonians will regain total sovereignty over Ambazonia. Thank you.
That's an amazing thing. Yes, Barrister Fru, before you comment, I just want to make a comment. This is the same international community we are observing for them to make statements or to take proactive actions to enable people oppressed or suffering from illegality to gain freedom. That was observing an election that took place this same time last week. They have despised the INEC candidate and they have just left. Some of them are commenting and they're not commenting enough. It would appear the illusion people see as an international community is really not upholding to the very things that they are supposed to. Barrister Barrister Fru, make your comment so we can move on.
Yes. I know Matthew Momo from Douala. He was speaking at the time he was national president of Paddy. And that his intervention plus the fact that he defended the victims of the Bipanda 9 made him the minister delegate in the Minister of Justice. What he has said is true, but I differ because La République du Cameroon's federal constitution of 1961 was voted in the East Cameroon House of Assembly, in the La République House of Assembly, and signed into law on the 1st of September 1961. And we were still under the British rule. As a lawyer, I know that a law cannot be made retroactive until it specifically says so. That constitution was imposed on us, even though it was already law in their territory. It was imposed on us after the Fumban, the so-called Fumban meeting. And therefore, it was never presented to our parliament for ratification. It was never presented to the KNDP member of government, and it was made to be applicable to us. And I said there was no joining. But Momo did a good job of talking about the fault of La République du Cameroon in violation of Article 47 of the Federal Constitution, a constitution that I do not consider a law binding on Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Because it was
Barrister Ghana and Barrister Bessia.
No,
This
let
is
me
a
finish.
this is a sweet argument you see Barrister Fru is bringing there. Go ahead, Barrister Fru.
Listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
A law that is meant, that is voted retroactive, before an event occurs, is not applicable until it's set to the people who were not there or who were not under that law, until that law itself specifically says so. And I've read the 1961 Constitution, and there's no such thing. It was a law passed by La République Parliament and imposed on us,
on the people of Southern Cameroon.
Southern Cameroons. It did not
So we
go to the
conclude
parliament.
therefore that every activity that took place was an annexation.
Yes, it did not go to the Southern Cameroon's parliament for ratification.
Okay.
It didn't go anywhere. It was just imposed on us.
Yeah, but Barrister Bessia, contribute to that. I'll still come to Barrister Ghana on this because it's important that we have this. We need to spend a few minutes on this.
My contribution is this. You say, when we find somebody saying it, he's the government minister, he's in the cabinet. He's not an Ambazonian. Let us take this as a rule going forward. When somebody says something like that, if he has made 10 points and 5 are in our favor,
no, it's good.
let us deal with the 5 and forget about his nonsense that we disagree with, because he's not here to debate with us. He's on record for saying what, yes, the Constitution didn't go to us. But why are we here? We're even here because that very Constitution that did not apply to us was abolished. That's not the issue for now. But the issue now, we have said something about the Nigerian elections, and the international community here. I've had opportunity to say this about our own cause. The international community is not just quiet. No, they are not silent about our problem. We have said here from this beginning that we have to take this thing into our own hands.
Yes.
And for us to take the thing into our own hands, just like that guy was saying, as I've just said, we have to be able to read the fine prints of diplomatic language, the fine actions of diplomatic language. Yes, they might despise the Nigerian elections. They might even despise the election commission there. But America, Japan, whoever will do nothing until the Nigerians take the thing by themselves. They take it up, then count on support from the international community. And back to our case, I said this before. When this thing, 2019 to 2021, the whole were including the Secretary of the United Nations. They said, look, go to Geneva and have addressed the root causes of the problem. The IG, we took it serious, but Ambazonians, some Ambazonians spoiled it because they did not read the fine print of diplomacy. If we expected the United Nations to send the force to come and fight for us, never. But we've been asking for a peacekeeping force, because peacekeeping force comes in when the two belligerent parties agree. And so when you have this fine print, green line, we must exploit it to the maximum. And again, just to say that our brothers and sisters...
Barrister Mbesea, it's important to understand that at the time he was making those comments, he was actually a hungry man. 2 years later...
No, forget about him. Yeah, whatever he said, it is documented that he meant
right it. Now, I just want to bring you our notice. A few days ago, it's an aside, it really doesn't concern Ambazonia directly. This same individual stood on one of their televisions and was saying that if anybody, moi j'ai déjà ma part, that means I already have mine. His interest was strong. Yeah, j'ai déjà ma part. If you want yours, go ahead, but make sure that you are not looking for the office of Bia, because there I will not stand with you. So this is that image of a Bia. It links us to the elections in Nigeria that was created, and people, they considered him. They taught us to think that President Bia was an alpha and an omega until the day Ambazonia said no. Let this lead us to what is happening to
Well,
Nigeria
before
now.
I know you landed where I know you landed where I was trying to land, please.
Okay,
I
please.
was saying that reading the fine prints of diplomacy is important, and that the bulk of Ambazonians, other than the IG,
Yeah.
did not understand what the Swiss thing meant. And they have
Yeah.
continued in their foolishness. And let me give this example. We all disagree with they're going to Canada, whatever thing was the intention, which we all agree was bad. But they go to Canada. If they were Ambazonians, all of them, Ayoba, Choa, whoever was there, and they go to Canada, if they had the idea of Ambazonia in their mind, they would have gotten there and said, we're all Ambazonians. This is our team. This is our team. They didn't do that. They said, this is Choyaba, this is Akwanga, this is IGAB. They didn't have even the idea that to successfully fight the enemy, you have a united team, even in their so-called Canada. If you don't have a united
So
team,
they are disunited. They are not united in their purported unity, conclave, or
because you
whatever.
don't even know. So what I was saying is that, again, like Mr. Masagana said, and as I've also said, this battle is our own to take care of.
Yep.
Meaning
Okay.
fighting physically and understanding intellectually what we should do at every time. And to come to what you have just said, you see, in 2018, when they elected so-called Mr. Paul Biya, he invented his own election observers. The whole world saw it. But the international community disowned him now. Because the Republic sat down, they didn't protest against his election. So what happened in Nigeria is terrible, yes. Again, as I've said, until the Nigerians take the bull by the horn and challenge whatever thing they have there as the election commission, their people voted or not voted, only then will the international community come and say, look, stop fighting. No, this thing was even wrong. Stop doing this. This thing was even wrong. But as long as they keep quiet, and when you are fighting, you're an Igbo man, you're a Yoruba man, you're a Hausa man, you're not the Nigerian, that's the end of it. And so the same thing applies to us. Let us take this fight into our hands, militarily, intellectually, legally, and all forms that it takes. We take control of it. And I'm sure the IG is doing the same thing. We have talked about this war crimes for a long time. We are filing cases. Notwithstanding whatever thing is going on, we are filing cases. I'm not sure all the people who purport to be IGs have filed any case anywhere. I'm not sure all the people who call themselves IG, A, B, or C have done anything other than making noise. So let us take control, and we're taking control. Be able to read the signs of diplomacy, be able to read the signs of support from wherever, and then we will succeed. We will succeed when we resist. I started by saying that the war crime thing will only succeed when we resist, and we have the arms to resist. We
It
have the
would appear
physical
that
arms.
it would appear that
let me enter.
yeah, I'm coming
Let me
back to you,
enter.
Barrister Fro. Barrister Fro, I'll come back to you. It would appear that Barrister Ghana has left us. If he's there, maybe he should give us
No,
a
he's still sitting
final
there.
statement.
He's
No,
there.
He's there.
I that he has left.
Okay.
Barrister. So now that he has left us, we're gonna continue without him. So this is the point. But you have said something I want to highlight so that we don't forget, Barrister Team. You're saying that we should do so spiritually, financially, militarily, to take the bull by the horn and to take responsibility for our freedom. Barrister Fru, you wanted to add something. I think this is the
I just
stronghold
wanted to. I wanted to.
of
Yes,
Zama.
I want to say that. I want to say that the Nigeria election, there has been reaction from the big boys of the world, and let me read them. They are very short. The Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, reacts heavily, alleges rigging by INEC, calls for cancellation. That's the Prime Minister of Great Britain, of the United Kingdom. The Secretary General of the United Nations, UN Antonio Guterres, alleges corruption in Nigeria electoral body, calls for cancellation. And the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, calls for total cancellation of Nigerian 2023 polls. And then we'll go on. Angry Putin warns Nigerian government and demands cancellation of 2023 fraudulent polls. The president of France, Macron, describes Nigeria's next chairman's action as highest level of irresponsibility. What I'm trying to say is that Nigerian elections have been reacted by the big boys. And Nigeria is more important to the big boys than the tiny Ambazonia, which has the largest deposit of crude oil in the world, one of the largest crude oil in the world. But the big boys are not reacting to the genocide in Ambazonia. And
what I think, Barrister Fru, what I actually think is, like France is actually using Nigeria to exploit fuel from Ambazonia, from whatever gulf there is there. Before we even move on with this discussion,
I've not landed. I've not landed.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Look, because of that, because of all this reaction, Buhari had something to say. And it's a video. And he said, after reading, going through the report of the National Electoral Commission, he has now cancelled elections in 176,000 polling centers in Nigeria, and he has put the army and the police to police those polls, and anybody who thinks that he can carry a ballot box and run or do fraudulent activity will pay with his life. It's on video.
I read some of these updates. These are updates from last night, just last night.
Yes, he has taken the middle of the road from total cancellation that the big boys are asking for, but at least he has cancelled partially. And that shows the importance of Nigeria in the world, as opposed to what is happening in Ambazonia today. And I find it very difficult, because the British government was buried its head in the sand when all the genocides in Ambazonia were being committed, and when the explosions took place in Boya on the day of the Mount Cameroon race, the High Commissioner for the UK in Yaoundé condemned the actions in Boya. And I asked the question.
And called it violence.
Yes, and I asked the question, where has he been, or where has the British High Commission in Yaoundé been throughout the time that genocide was being committed on a territory that they colonized? Food for thought. Thank you.
The Britain actually did not colonize us. They were actually given responsibility to take care of us as a trust.
That is one way of colonization.
Now, I'm a Comrade Zama, please. I'm coming to you now. You're bubbling to speak. But before you speak, we have Nelson Oshiba on the call here to make a very vital contribution. And you speak before we conclude this program, the future of Africa. Go right ahead, Nelson. You have the floor.
Hello, Director. Can you hear me?
Very loud and clear.
I want to thank our fathers who are there educating our people. And I'm very, very happy with the videos you played today, because it is going to disprove La Republic with the narrative that they claim Southern Cameroon or Anglophones, they like to be with Cameroon. It is the diaspora that is disturbing them. So let Francophones talk to them. Let them understand that they are speaking in La Republic, not from diaspora. Biya himself in 1993, he granted an interview to RFE and said that, oh, Anglophones, they love to live with them. If he gives a referendum, they are going to vote to live with them. And later on, he came and talked about the special status. How can you be giving a referendum or a special status to somebody you claim is part of you? So what I want my father, my lawyers to help explain to La Republique is, let them tell La Republique the difference between a country and a colony. Because when you were playing that the video, the lady tried to tell Jean-Michel Momo that our country was divided. Pierre said the same thing. There was no country like La Republique, like Cameroon, before the 1st of January 1960. It was a German protectorate. Like a colony. So yes, so Pierre should not go about like the Jungo and the rest try telling that we were one, and they came and divided us. Okay, see when we came together as they claim, why did they not give us back to Germany? What have they done with the territory that went to other places? So La Republique should begin to understand that she is a sovereign state, and the sovereignty of La Republique is defined as per the day of her independence on the 1st of January 1960. Southern Cameroon was not part of it, and they also ratified the African Union Constitutive Act Article 4B. We were not part of it. That is the one and indivisible Cameroon. We are not part of it. Yes, so I thank you people for also mentioning Nigerian elections and as to why they are not endorsing it. I think if the international community is not the international community has not endorsed Nigerian elections, it is because of two principal things. Their influencers, their activists, and everybody, they were out there, they put out all evidence of corruption, bribery, and everything to the hearing of the world. And then one of their elderly person, who is well known by the whole world, took a bold step. Obasanjo came out there and said they should cancel the election. So these are things that people like the Fundi and the rest, they could have been doing with certain Cameroons, but yet they go out there. Because Obasanjo, when he spoke, Thabo Mbeki, European Union, all of them, they started saying, everything was fraud, everything was fraud. So we should stop now to consider any person, an elite or a chief, who cannot stand with our people. They go and kill people, gather people, put them on the street for nothing. They say the war is finished. Why are they going around with bulletproof weapons and all those kind of things to go and intimidate people, take them at a gunpoint and all those kind of people? Ambazonia is going to be free. Come rain, come sun. All those who protest in Naples and whosoever. I am very happy that our people, even if they take you people from a gunpoint, you can even go there and listen, but don't do what they want to tell you. Yes, you are not slaves that you have to be holding you hostage at gunpoint. Because Yaoundé people go to Yaoundé to go and hold people at gunpoint? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to add to something that Ochiba just said, Nelson Ochiba said, you realize that the rhetoric of one Cameroon is promoted by Ngole and Muna. These are not ignorant when it comes to historicity and legality of Ambazonia or Southern Cameroons, but they choose to outrightly deceive the public. Yes, SOS Ama, please.
I just wanted to drop a point regarding the Nigerian elections. The Nigerian elections, all the Europeans and the Americans have refused to acknowledge that election. But that will come out for naught if the Nigerians themselves don't start going to the streets and say, yes, this is something we are not going to accept. Because nobody's going to come fight that war for them. Nobody's going to come make those decisions for them. These same countries are the very countries that are enabling a lot of the dictators around in Africa. So the Nigerians have their own destiny in their hands, especially when the young men are all sitting out there getting drunk. They will be waking up in their stupor when the old people have dragged them all into their graveyards. So the Nigerian citizens and the Nigerian youth have to take their country back from all these old men who've been very corrupt. They've been very, very corrupt, and they've not done nothing to promote a very large and very endowed country like Nigeria. Given that, we have to look in terms in our own sphere why these countries are not coming to our own rescue. It's still the same thing. If we are not going to fight for ourselves, why do you want an American from Detroit or from Indiana or from Wisconsin to go stand on the front line to fight for you? You have to fight your own battles. You have to get it in. And that's where we are calling for Ambazonians to do that fighting. Once you start pushing your car, it's just like you see a lady standing at the side of the road with their car keys and thinking that somebody must stop there to push her car up. But if she was pushing her car, I bet you many people will come to her. But when she's just standing by that car, people just drive by. And that's just how people react. And we have to understand that. And despite the fact that the history is on our side, legality is on our side, we have to impose that. We have to make it preponderance of that evidence to people, showing that we have to defend that. Our life depends on it because we are being stuck on the throat and our people have to fight. And if we don't do that, there's no European who is going to do that. They have a very bad track record when it comes to Africans with genocide and with wars. We've seen how many wars have from Chad to Sudan to Central Africa to Zaire, all over. All these things have been fought. Nobody has lifted a finger. They come in after the barn has been burnt down, and there is no prevention. That all those protocols that are meant to prevent war never applies when it comes to African nations. So we have to do this ourselves. We have to demarcate ourselves. We have to behave ourselves, even though according to norms that we were not the ones who set. But it's our duty. It's our duty to fight for Ambazonia. It's our duty to fund this fight, irrespective of what people are saying that, they'll charge you for funding terrorism. Nobody has defined Ambazonian Restorative Forces as a terrorist group. Nobody has said nothing to that effect. We are willing. We will raise money as much as possible anytime that we want to do that. Let nobody be scared of anything. We do contribute to the Ukrainian wars. For those of you who have Ukrainian friends, we do that. But who's going to come and to arrest us that we did contribute to that? Who's going to arrest America for contributing? People are contributing their own self to go fight for Ukraine. So we could do that. And we are asking all our citizens, don't be scared of anything. There's nothing you are doing wrong. It's just like providing food for the refugees in Nigeria. It's just like providing clinical paths for
humanitarian support.
Pardon me?
It is a humanitarian support. I'm agree with you.
Yes, we are all doing humanitarian support because most of the defense, we carry these soldiers, we carry wounded people. There's no hospital that treats these people. We treat a lot of them in the bushes. We've sent a lot of things over there for our patients to be treated in the bushes. And that's where we don't go buy bullets and all the stuff. We have to feed our citizens. Otherwise, fighting this war with no citizen, it doesn't make no sense. We are fighting so that the citizens can go back to their homes, where they live their lives peacefully, even though albeit poorly, but they have a place to call theirs. It's our place to restore them into their rightful place in history, into their heritage, and not to be living in some bushes or in some places in countries in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, and in Nigeria. Some of them are far back here in America and in Dubai, and going into slavery because of what is going on back in Ambazonia. And I think it's pitiful that all of us have not decided to be on the right side of history.
Indeed, it is painful that a lot of Ambazonians, Southern Cameroonian bonds are still contemplating whether or not it is their duty to be a part of this logical movement. And that's where we should be drawing close to the end of this program. Should Nigeria be learning from should the youths in Nigeria be learning from the youths of Southern Cameroons who took on the streets and said, never again, we will not tolerate it? Because Mr. Biya can do that in his country, but he and his ministers now know that they cannot dictate to the peoples of Amazonia ever again. Is there any lesson the peoples of the former British Southern Cameroons, other African nations, even La République du Cameroon, where Kamto won an election and that was stolen. Is there any lesson that anyone can draw from what is currently going on in Nigeria? Barrister Tim, I'll start with you, Barrister Fro, and then we'll have a close-up to this program.
Yes, I think as far as the Nigerian election is concerned, I buy into all what Secretary of State has said. But I will add this. This is my opinion. Cancel the elections. Do what you want. I don't believe, personally, I don't believe it's going to alter anything. The Nigerian people, educated as they are, they missed an opportunity when they were setting up the electoral process. It is almost impossible that in a country as large as Nigeria, you will run a presidential elections on a simple majority with 4 different parties. If you have 4 parties with 4 candidates and you deal with simple majority, the chances are that you are never going to have a president with legitimacy over the whole country. Suppose all the Nordics decide to vote their own man and he has the simple majority, he rules. Suppose all the Easterners or Westerners decide to vote their own man and he or she wins the simple majority, he wins the election. So their fight should go beyond that. It should go beyond just this election. They should go back to the drawing board. I have a position where there are 4 candidates as they were, and one does not have an absolute majority. There should be a second round for the first 2. So that somebody who wins must have more than 50% of the vote nationwide. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. From what we hear, the North is always big in population, so they are going to influence the simple majority. If they all fall behind an Igbo man, they'll be their slave. If they all fall behind the Yoruba man, they'll be their slave. I'm surprised to see that Mr. What do you call him? The former head of state there. He was making noise. This is the guy who was the president of Nigeria. He was a military guy, he became president. And when he ruled after his day, he was trying to change the constitution. And so, again, the problem of Nigeria, I think, this is my view again, going for a simple majority is not going to produce somebody who is legitimate in the country.
So what is your suggestion? Because we are being watched in Nigeria.
My suggestion, they go to a drawing board. If they must allow 4 parties to exist. If they must allow, because officially there are 4 parties. There must be a second round. Somebody must have an absolute majority. If somebody doesn't get that at the first round, they must go for a second round. The first 2 compete, and somebody who wins must have 50 plus. This simple majority thing, where this guy who is supposed to have won about 25%, he's not going to give somebody legitimacy in that place.
Now, Barrister Tim, I want to stay with you on this because here is the concern. Unfortunately, Barrister Ghana is back. The concern at hand is the elections, simple proportion, whatever arithmetic you're putting there, is that it was outrightly rigged. What we counted at the polls, because the procedure was simple. We will vote, we will count, and we will upload into the server, INEC server, and then it will be saved, not concluded. It is just a double checking. We will save it there to double check, and then we will publish it. But then INEC thought that their machines will not work after when it is time for uploading. But when it is time for announcement, they will get results. What should the Nigerian people and youths do right now? Because what you're saying is long-term, is in the future. What should they do right now to reclaim their votes that they voted and counted at the police stations? That is the concern. Perhaps you want to talk about that briefly, and let me rush to Barrister Ghana in that regard.
Now, this is the point. Were there problems? Yes. Was there rigging? Yes, there was. Was there cheating? Of course, there was. Nobody is disputing that. But if the Nigeria we're discussing here is the Nigeria I know, you will always have. Nigeria is not different from many crooked African countries. You will always have those situations. And let me give an example. All of us can remember just a few years back what happened in the Côte d'Ivoire. They had some problem there, the North, the West, and so on. but they successfully had a two-round elections. When Gbagbo at the first elections had only 48%, that was overall. He should have been president. But he needed 51, so they say a second round. I went around, the people of the middle area all joined with Ouattara. And so, until we address this in Africa, even in Cameroon, if you don't deal with that, the Bulus will use money to buy the simple majority. The Bamilekis will use their money to buy the simple majority. So, bottom line, if they want the reform to be effective, whatever machines they are using, we don't know how they manipulate the election, the machines, whatever thing they were saying, they did something wrong. But that thing that they did wrong has called for this discussion. If they didn't even do that wrong and they counted them properly, somebody would have probably had 30% and won. Would that person with 30%, where there's no contest, have legitimacy over 300 million people if the 30% only came from one region? That's the question they should address. Now, if they have to reform something, let them do it now. Let them prolong Mr. Buhari's stay in power, put in the correct rules, conduct elections, that would not be subject to much contest.
Barrister Fru, do you agree with that?
Yeah, now I have read the
Mr. Ghana is back.
I've read the
Yes,
Nigeria electoral.
I'll give him the mic to conclude.
Yeah, listen. I've read the Nigeria electoral law. It says, he who wins the majority of the votes must also win 25% of 2/3 of the states. So they have built in their own how you get to be elected president in the majority. It is a unique electoral law that builds in. If you come first, like Tinubu has 37%, he must also win 25% of 2/3 of the states, of all the states in Nigeria. That brings them to the same level that my senior colleague was talking about, 51%. Nigeria is too big to govern, so they have come up with that formula to make sure that you don't only get the majority, but you also have some level of votes from the states.
Barrister Fru, this is the point. Now that Barrister Fru, this is the point. Now that that formula is working, what should the Nigerian people and youths do now?
That's where I'm coming to. That's where I'm coming to.
Yes.
They have rigged that election so badly, and the youths of that country, I know the way the youths of that country behave. Now that they have taken on the streets, if what Buhari has said, 176,000 polling centers have been cancelled. If that poll takes place normally, it will change the face of it will change the victory of that election. And even if it doesn't change, the world will see it as legitimate. That is the point I mean. And the youths will not accept any old man like Tinubu, who was 70 years as governor of Lagos, of the Lagos state, and is still calling himself 70 years today, 10 years after. He was 70 when he was governor, and it's more than 10 years since he was governor. Now he cannot tell us that he's still 70, and that's what is in his resume. And I'm saying that Nigerian youths will not back down like Cameroonian youths. And it goes to buttress our youths in Ambazonia. Our youths will not back down on this fight. But if this fight was taking place in La Republique, it would have long since finished. The proof is that Bamileke youths could not withstand the forces of the fight.
They could not withstand rubber bullets, because this is what happened, yes. Barrister Fru. They were shooting them with rubber bullets and shooting our people with iron bullets, shooting to kill, shooting them to injure.
That's why the English system education gives our youth, the courage to know the difference between right and wrong. That's why the Nigerian youths are determined. They are determined that they will not have another old man governing Nigeria. And they are determined that those elections must be redone in such a way that that man does not win, because he has fraudulently taken the votes. By buying the votes with his money, he has bought the Electoral Commission chairman with $1.7 million, and it's well documented. And the Nigerian youth are determined that it will not happen. Let's wait.
They will
and
not
see.
let that happen. That is quite instrumental. Barrister Ghana, before your return, we had this discussion, and Comrade Zama believes that no matter whatever we say, the youths have got to take responsibility in their hands. Barrister Tim thinks that the system defies logic for a nation like Nigeria, and they've got to tweak it. Now, Barrister Fru wants us to believe that Nigeria has their own model to meet up the standards that Barrister Tim is trying to put now. He also agrees that the youths must take responsibility. But you have the winner, the supposed winner, who is Peter Obi, is asking the youths to calm down, and that he is going to go to the courts. The same court in Nigeria that has refused, that has not has defied a lot of things we know, but it is a court that has proven, and he is claiming that he has won in that same court 3 times. It is a court that has ordered Sisiko to be transferred back into Nigeria, and nothing has happened. What do you think in this whole thing? Are you in support or in favor of any? What are the chances of Peter Obi actually pulling through and reclaiming his mandate in the courts? Barrister Ghana, please.
Comrade Paddy, you know, I'm sitting in a beautiful office, and there is, in the middle of winter, as we are beginning to give way to spring, there's some beautiful sunlight that is coming, and it's kind of obscuring my view, and it's kind of obscuring my face. But there's a little speck on the window, and when I look at that window, I can choose to enjoy that sunshine, or I can choose to have a problem with that little speck on the window. Why do I say this? I'm going to give you another example. There was a senator in the United States a long time ago called Senator Joseph Lieberman. He was a senator from Pennsylvania. Yeah, and sometime at about 2000 or so, there was a presidential candidate called Al Gore who picked Senator Lieberman to be his running mate on that ticket. And Senator Lieberman loved being a senator in Pennsylvania. That was his dream job. So he called his mom and he said, "Mom, I love being a senator, but also there has never been a Jewish vice president in the United States. I don't know what to do. Should I remain a senator, or should I go be on the ticket?" And the mother said, "Son, I don't know what you should do, but that is a good problem to have." Why do I say this? Because all of us here grew up in an Africa that was called the bleeding continent. If all of us take our minds back to the 70s and the 80s, there were civil wars going on almost in every corner of Africa. Angola, Mozambique, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, you name it. And so Africa was called the bleeding continent. About 20 years or so, they had an election in Nigeria where Babangida orchestrated an election. Mushood Abiola won, and he arrested Mushood Abiola and locked Mushood Abiola until he died in jail. About 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you look at the African continent, there was not a single democracy. The whole continent was populated with dictators who had no term limit. If you look at Africa as we see it now, You see democracies all over. Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Nigeria, yes, I would say Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, and democracies mean there has been the swinging of power from the ruling party to opposition and back. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because I appreciate Barrister Mbesa and Barrister Funso getting in the weeds and trying to tackle this. But I want to look at it from 30,000 feet above ground to say, even though we are having problems with the election in Nigeria, it is a good problem. 30 years ago, Buhari would have found a way to stay in power forever until a coup took him out. Constitutional governance has been enshrined in Nigeria, where they now have the rational expectation that after 8 years, you are out. Constitutional law evolves. Constitutional democratic governance evolves. Barrister Funso studied law in the United States. And I'm very sure that...
Barrister Ghana, please, you have to speak, but I want to come here. Are you saying that a larger part of Africa, I'm adding to you so that you can really fix it. Ambazonians are worried listening to you now. A larger part of Africa has evolved, improved in constitutional laws, in democracy, and the Bimvodo country and hegemony in Ambazonia have chosen not to make one step forward, because
I'm not saying every African country, Comrade Paddy. The 3 pillars in Africa, the nations that are 3 pillars in Africa are South Africa, DRC, and Nigeria. All of these 3 countries have constitutions. Though imperfect, we've had elections where the ballot box has taken the leader out of power. When you look at Nigeria, since the advent of democracy, since we had Obasanjo, and then I think he transitioned to Yaradua, and then Goodluck Jonathan came to power, there has been a burgeoning of capitalism. Nigerian culture is taking over the world. We don't even listen to hip hop anymore. We listen to Nigerian music. And this is the bonus. This is the bonus of democratic capitalism. So yes, Tinubu might have rigged the election. Yes, the elections might not have been perfect. But the wind of change, the wheel of progress, and the managing of emotions. Remember, civilization is just about the intelligent managing of emotions. And the past is just preface to the future. When we look at the past and we look at the future, my brother, Africa is changing for the better. There's a lot to complain about the election in Nigeria, but one thing that we know is that in 4 years or in 8 years, even if Tinubu stays, if he stays alive even through the presidency, there is going to be change. And that renewed leadership and activism by the youths in the various movements to pressure the senators to stand for what is right. Remember, about 15 years or so, Obasanjo tried to change the constitution to perpetuate his rule to another 4-year term. Atiku and the Nigerian Senate put a stop to that. So there are positive changes that are taking place. If you look at the rest of the world, the democratic West, John Funso studied law in the United States. He will remember having studied in law school that there was a time in the United States where when the president did not like what was happening on the Supreme Court, the president just packed the Supreme Court with more judges, to a time where there were about 13 judges on the United States Supreme Court. But president settled it to 9. And we have evolved into a situation where we are observing 9 judges as the rightful dispensation of the United States Supreme Court. So the United States has had to go through its own evolution to arrive at where it is. Africa is also going through its own evolution. Like I say, the 3 pillars in Africa, South Africa, DRC, and Ghana. And all of these are being governed by
Nigeria.
I beg your pardon, and Nigeria. And whether we like it or not, whether the rest of the world likes it or not, Africa is evolving into its own age. The promise of Africa is like that sunrise on the horizon, and change will come. Thank you.
That is an amazing part. But I want, as you conclude, we're all going to have 2 minutes to conclude on this, whatever we have to say. As you conclude, I would like to start with Barrister Fru, now that he has indicated.
Yes, I want to say that.
Where do we look before you?
No, let me.
So that you add this, I want you to add this with your conclusion. Looking at the before inauguration of office, what are we anticipating will possibly happen in Nigeria before the installation of the next man to sit in Aso Rock? Yes,
I want to congratulate my colleague Barrister Ghana for giving that short analysis of what is happening in Africa, and it's true. Now, having said that, you asked a question, Paddy. We had a judgment from Nigerian High Court, Abuja High Court, that was supposed to return Ayuk Tabe and others back to Nigeria. It didn't happen because of problems of education. But let me tell you, Nigeria has one of the freest judicial system, an independent judicial system in Africa. Just like South Africa, they have a very rigorous, independent judiciary. So if Peter Obi goes before the court, and I'm suspecting that he will be suing in the Abuja High Court, he will get that judgment and it will be executed if the judgment is passed in his favor. That's to answer the question you posed. The Nigerian judiciary is not dependent upon the executive. Just like Paul Biya is sitting in Yaoundé and with Laura Iso, they are manipulating whatever they are manipulating. It doesn't happen in Nigeria. And that is why the Attorney General of Nigeria is sitting on fire, because no lawyer, no part of Nigeria would tolerate the interference of the judiciary, of the executive on the judiciary in Nigeria. Having said that, you ask me another question. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? Who is going to be sworn in?
What can we anticipate? Maybe
Let me tell you what I anticipate. The youths of Nigeria, if you look at where the rigging, I have looked at the map where the rigging actually took place. It was in areas that did not concern Obi's direct constituency. It was in Plateau, it was in parts of the Lagos state, the Ondo state, and where a lot of rigging took place. And in the north, some places in the north. That is why if Buhari goes ahead and the 176,000 polling centers, not polling stations, polling centers, when go back to repeat the election in those areas. My prediction is that Peter Obi is going to win because of the youths. The youths have come out in their numbers to vote, and they take into consideration the body politics of Nigeria vis-a-vis the very old and the in between young people. Peter Obi is one of the youngest of all the candidates that you saw in this election, and the youth are determined. And I'm telling you, my prediction is that Peter Obi will finally win this election.
Will finally be the one that will be installed in Aso Rock. Now that
will be installed.
Yes, I will get to Barrister Tim and then Barrister Ghana to conclude. But let me come to Secretary Zama. Secretary Zama, what do you think? You have already said and proposed what you want Nigerians, you to do right now. What do you think will happen looking at the circumstances before us? Obi is going to court. Buhari is now being bold enough to cancel where he thought that election was not proper. The international community is responding big, and the youths are ready to storm the streets. What are you anticipating in the next couple of weeks as Nigerians are planning to install the man in Asarok?
Well, I think they might go ahead and install him, but I don't think he's going to last in that seat. Given all the appeals by Obi to the Supreme Court in Nigeria, um, the rigging was so atrocious, it was so pernicious that there is no, even a blind person could have seen it, what was going on in Nigeria in those elections. So I think it's just a matter of going back to the courts. And I really like the way Peter Obi is taking this, because if it was one, he would have gone to tribal politics and riled up the Igbo people to act up and all that. No, but he was very rational. He said, no, calm down. Let me exhaust all recourse for
All
me
I'm
given by the law. And he's going to do that. And I think with all the pressure coming from every direction and knowing what INEC did, some of the directors or administrators of INEC were very, very corrupted in that process. There were some of them who were flying out of their districts of control to Lagos, and they spent time with candidates of this election. So I think the Nigerians, the citizens, have to continue putting pressure on the systems, because all these are systems. The judicial system will be able to do a fair judgment when it comes to this. They are always fair, but I think this is a much more X-ray. They are all X-ray to the world community and to their own citizens, who is for them and who is not for them. And I think the citizens of Nigeria, and especially the youth, and an intelligent youth population in Nigeria that's burgeoning everywhere. We are tired seeing Africans dying in the desert. We are tired seeing Africans dying in the forest in Latin America because of lack of opportunities, because the old people don't know, they don't have those opportunities, but dragging these kids to their own graves. So I think this election will be redone, and I think Mr. Peter Obi will be the winner, because I think he garnered a larger population. He brought in a little bit over 60 million new voters into the role. I think that's a large constituency to deal with it, just that alone.
Yeah, that is quite
That,
interesting. I like the person. Now, by the team, I'm coming to you in a very different light. I would say rumors, because no court has ratified that to be true. And we are told that INEC chairman has been bribed 1.6
$7
million
million.
US, 1.7 million US dollars to do this. That has to be confirmed. If proven by a legal authority or jurisdiction, that is a crime against the Nigerian law and laws. Do you think corporates should, that will first of all serve as evidence? I don't need to ask you that. But do you think that the Nigeria will do what is right, maybe to arrest this the corrupter and corruptee? That should go with
I
your
think
conclusion.
I think we should be very careful when we draw certain conclusions on assumptions. First and
Yeah.
foremost, I don't care whether it is Obi or whoever wins. Now,
Oh, no.
I care whether the procedure is the right one. And so, I would want to find out from Mr. Nso, who probably knows more about the constitution of Nigeria than I do, where in Nigeria does the president derive the power to cancel elections in particular areas? If he does not have the power to the constitutional powers to cancel elections, then his declaration of whether 1,000 polls invalid is as illegal as the election itself. And so that is just wrong. Secondly, to what Mr. Ansel said, a credible judicial system is where you get a judgment from a court and it is enforced. If you get a judgment which is not enforced, it's not a judgment. That's not a legal system that I can call it credible. And to that, I will remind us that in 2002, when Mr. Obasanjo was in power as the president of Nigeria. We went to the same Abuja High Court. Ambazonians went to the Abuja High Court and obtained a consent judgment, entered with the Prosecutor General of the Federal Government of Nigeria. They consented in writing and in the final judgment to take Ambazonia case to all international institutions and the United Nations inclusive. Till today, after Obasanjo left, others have come in and gone. They have never enforced that judgment. So what's the credibility of a system like that? And now we're talking of a recent case. The very Abuja High Court ordered that they should return Sisiko and the rest, and asked that they should pay compensation. They should pay compensation. It has not been done. And so you call that a credible judicial system? To me, that is bullshit. And then
when it comes to execution,
I would answer. I would respond.
No, well, it's not an argument between us. I'm just making a point that I don't believe in the Nigerian judicial system, giving these two examples. Otherwise, they would have enforced it. Everybody, any legal man in the world, knows that a consent judgment is not appealable. It must be enforced. But 2002 till today is 22 years, 21 years. It has not been enforced by any federal president. That was a consent judgment against the federal government. And so want me, Ambazonia, to be they are credible? No, they are not. And then go back to the Nigerian elections. What do you think will happen? Even if they repeat those things or they don't repeat it, when it comes to somebody being sworn in, they swear in Tinubu, I don't know who is, much with the impression from Great Britain, from the United Nations, that, oh, the elections were rigged. What would they do? Do you expect the British Prime Minister to expel the Nigerian ambassador to UK? Do you expect the Secretary General of the UN to expel? Because these are the only possible sanctions they have. They say, no, your government is not represented. Leave the United Nations, because the government that has appointed you here is tainted with illegality. They will never do that.
And that's the insanity in diplomacy.
Let me finish. They will never do that, because the very United Nations, the very UK, the very France, the very US, they have accepted coup d'etats. People will just seize power. Send the ambassador there, they don't send them away. So again, as we have said many times before, let the Nigerian people take the bull by the horns.
Yes.
If they do that, they might get something. But thinking that the international community will help you, they will not help you, just like Ambazonia, until you help yourself. So, again, we have had this. I don't know why I like to give this example. That was exactly what happened in the Ivory Coast. Gbagbo Election Commission, in the protest, that changed the result of the election and giving it to somebody. Then they purported the council.
A lot of observers, even myself, because I read when I was reading the Francophonie, doing research on it, it is clear that France, Sarkozy shamelessly helped Ouattara against Gbagbo.
Yeah. No, I'm not. So that's what I'm going to. I'm not going to go into that debate. No, I'm not going to that debate. Yeah. But this is the point I'm trying to make. I'm not going to go into that debate. But this is the point I'm trying to make. When they were having that their thing, that their West Africa Economic Community, where the Ivory Coast belongs, they sent in a team of experts to go to Abidjan and find out what was going on. I was there. The guy went to the president of the Electoral Commission. What happened? I'm trying to come to what Russell said. He said, well, we discovered that there was some fraud here. We changed the election. We canceled the election there and put the results this way. They said, no, the Electoral Code did not permit you to do that. They permitted you, the Electoral Code only said that if you found fraud, that constituency should be cancelled, election be organized in 45 days. Transferring votes because you do not believe in the in the credibility of the election to another one was wrong. And so that is why, maybe you didn't read this in your study, that is why the very president, the very president of the Constitutional Council, who had sworn in Bagbo on the result they published, came out with a second ruling in the same court. I said, yeah, we swore in Bagbo, but based on the international community, they have come and challenged us. We think that based on this international concession, it is whatever we want. I said, as I've said, like I said in Obi, I don't care who is this. I didn't care who is Bagbo or whatever. Now I'm dealing with with the principles that govern it.
With available data.
And so, because if we go to those personalities, it becomes a personal thing. Now, I don't want to give credit to Obi or condemn the other guy for being old or young. That's their problem. If he was too old, his party would never have put him there. If you put him there and the Nigerians don't even believe him, the 20% would not even have voted for him anyway. So that is not my problem. The problem is, what would they do? Dictatorships are all over the world. We all agreed, and most people agree, that the elections in Nigeria were tainted with illegalities. But what would happen come the swearing-in day? This guy might be sworn in, and what would Britain do? What would the United Nations do? They will do nothing until the Nigerians make the country ungovernable. Yes, again, like I said in Ambazonia, until we, the Ambazonians, make their own
the bottom line is, we are all agreeing. Barrister Fru, you will just be a little bit brief since you are already concluded. I know you want to.
Yes, I want to respond. I want to respond.
Yes.
We are all
agreeing on one thing, that it is left on the people of Nigeria to take responsibility.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes. Listen, Buhari does not have the power to cancel the election. What he did, he followed the electoral law. The electoral law of Nigeria says, after the elections, a copy of the results are sent to the presidency, to the president of the outgoing president. And they do that. They do that to give credibility for the elections. Buhari is not a candidate. Buhari took the report from INEC and formed a small commission, including people from INEC, including the chairman of INEC and all that. And they evaluated those results. And Buhari did not sit down and say 176,000 polling centers were cancelled. It was reviewed by that commission and came out with a result that from what this report is saying, 176,000 polling centers have got to be cancelled because it was massive fraud in those centers. Therefore, he was announcing, if you listen,
I think it was just wrong that you allowed Obi to go to court as he's doing. Obi is doing the right thing.
When you were talking, I was listening.
Okay, go on now.
What I'm saying is that, Buhari did not cancel the election by himself. He created a commission. The chairman of INEC was a member of that commission. That commission reviewed, Judicial Commission, reviewed those results, and from center to center to center to center, and came up with 176,000 polling centers to be cancelled and to be redone. And in order to give it a backing, he put security so that there will be no rigging. He put the police and the army to police anybody who is attempting to rig those elections. Let me finish.
Okay, finish.
Let me predict this. The judiciary in Nigeria. I was in court in the Abuja High Court. I was so impressed with the judges of the Nigerian High Court. We were going against the Attorney General of Nigeria, Femi Falana and my team. We went against the Attorney General of Nigeria. The young lady, the judge, ruled for us. And let me tell you, anything that involves foreign execution of a judgment, Nigeria is very reticent. they have not been able to execute this one against Ayub Tabe because it has to take Cameroon to agree. Now, with the consent judgment, it concerned the people of the southern Cameroon as it then was. And Obasanjo didn't think that his attorney general can get into some international rigmarole to execute that consent judgment. But if it's a judgment on the people of Nigeria taken in Nigeria, you look at what happened to Nwanko Kalo. Nwanko Kalo won because he was kidnapped from wherever he was and brought to be tried in Nigeria. And he won because it was a Nigerian citizen in Nigeria. What I'm saying is that the Nigerian judiciary is next to South Africa in Africa to be free and fair. Plus the Ghanaian, the Nigerian, and the Kenyan judiciary is very, very free. And I stand to be corrected because I have been in the courts in Nigeria and I saw the way the judges handled each case. And I was so impressed. And
now we're getting
that Nigerian judiciary is bullshit. I would say that is not correct.
Yeah, it's important for us to understand.
But let me just clarify this point. Let me
because we might just not end today.
I think misunderstood me. I have to clarify that point. Let him understand my point.
Very briefly, please. Very briefly.
I have said, and I'm still saying it. What the president of Nigeria done with the election is wrong, legally wrong. He doesn't have the power constitutionally to deploy police to go and police station. But that's not the issue. On the problem I was trying to illustrate. No, let me talk to you now. I was trying to illustrate how the Nigerian justice does not even apply its own laws. If you have time, go and read the 2002 case I've mentioned. It was in Abuja High Court. Listen, let me finish now. The federal government, under the Attorney General, they raised all those objections you have mentioned. And they lost. They say you could not hear it because it's in Cameroon. They said, no, you will do it. And what were they asked to do? They were not asked to go and seek permission from Cameroon to do what I'm saying. They agreed.
I'm not talking about the
No, they agreed to take our cases to the United Nations and international organizations. They did not need the consent of anybody to do that. They have not done it. I understand.
An order is asked for people to come. Yeah.
No, that order is not for him to. It's not for the Nigerian federal government to make a choice. They had agreed to do this. To go this thing at the United Nations, they did not need the permission of London, of Japan, of America. They have not done it. That's the basic point. I don't mind where you go to Nigeria called 1 million times.
We're talking about taking Sisiko back from the Cameroon.
That we got for Ayub Tabe.
No, Paddy, all my cases.
We're talking about taking Sisiko from Yaoundé back into Nigeria as ordered by the High Court.
No, this is what I've said. Paddy, you're not following me. I've taken this particular. But sometimes I say, even if you say they wanted to bring them back to Nigeria and Cameroon does not release them, they will not go. That's okay. But I've mentioned one. The 2002 decision that did not require any permission from anybody.
Yeah.
Which executed, not on Obasanjo, the presidents after Obasanjo, I think there have been 4 or 5. No one has executed what the order took to do. So that judgment is binding. Let me finish, Paddy. I'm not here to litigate Nigeria. All my arguments are treated towards Ambazonia.
Yeah.
So if you believe in the Nigerian judicial system, that's your problem. I don't have any problem with that. As far as Cameroon is concerned, I say their judicial system is not credible. When we started this war, 2019, the devaluers are telling me, they asked me to give them a copy of the 2002 ruling with the executive order. I sent copies to them. They said they were going to meet senators. They were going to do this. Till today, 2-3 years after, it has not been executed. Do you want me to give credit because you found a good lawyer, a good judge sitting in a certain court in Nigeria? Now, I'm dealing with the federal court that gave a consent judgment which they have not executed as far as Ambazonia is concerned. I don't care how many people go to prison in Nigeria.
Mr. Bessia, the sweet part about it is that you are right with the things you're saying, and Barrister Fru is also right to give some level of appreciation to that legal system. We also heard from Barrister Ghana, who is going to be concluding the discussion now. You realize that from 2002 until now, Nigeria would have evolved. That they are not being able to execute court order is a question mark that is necessary for you to place. And it's important that we are scrutinizing the system, because at the end of the day, this discussion must end with the interest of Ambazonia. So as we crown it up all with the interest of Ambazonia in this Gulf of Guinea, that Nigeria happens to be a giant in it, I'm asking you, Mr. Ghana, to talk to us. What do you think is the near future? Looking into looking at what is happening, Buhari has purportedly criticized several polling stations. I'm told that it is not actually a cancellation. He is disinclined to whatever happened there.
No, it's a
We
cancellation.
actually
He said
saw
it himself.
French
It's a
Cameroonian
cancellation.
citizens. We have seen the power of the people. French Cameroonian bloggers, journalists, and people put their voices, and Martinez Zogo had many people, because of his death, had many people into Kondengi. So our interest here is examining people power and the future of this election that is yet to arrive its end. And I would like you to talk to us. We also understand that no war leader has commended or commented about these elections, but we just heard some write-ups now. Barrister Fru was reading statements from British PM and all of that. So that is yet to be verified.
Joe Biden.
To see,
And Joe Biden.
yeah,
Hello, how
and
are
Joe
you?
Biden. So,
Yeah, Chris.
so we're going to verify all of that to see the authenticity of it. Here is our interest. What can Ambazonia learn in conclusion, and where could we be in the next weeks, in a few weeks to come, as Nigeria is planning to install the right person at Aso Rock? Barrister Ghana,
Paddy,
please.
thank you very much. You could not have asked a better question than to ask me to conclude with what Ambazonia's interest in. Historically, the political of the three main political regions in Nigeria, the East, the South, and the North, leaders from the North have always been more hostile to an independent Ambazonia. So the first thing we have to celebrate is that finally, after 8 years, power is swinging from the North to the South, who will have a better listening ear to Ambazonians. So we as Ambazonians have to strategize better on how to approach the new administration, whether it is the administration of Tinubu or the administration of Peter Obi. We have to strategize for that. But looking at it from a second point, from a more celebrative angle, you know, going back to 1961, when African countries were receiving their independence, less than 1% had college education. Most of the presidents of African countries were glorified grade 2 teachers. But now we are having a sophisticated class of leaders taking over, represented by somebody like Mr. Peter Obi. And we are having an African undercurrent of activism, where intelligent college graduates savvy with technology are beginning to contribute to determine the evolution of the democratic political structure in Africa. So looking at what is happening in Nigeria, as our two very brilliant attorneys were debating on how entrenched the rule of law is in Nigeria, when Shagari took power in 79, and when he had his second election in about 1983, he was overthrown. Today, we are talking about how the various laws, statutes, regulations are affecting the decision of INEC. That is a point to celebrate. But coming back to Ambazonia, there is something we have to keep in mind. Before I say that, let me say a little short story here. There was a little video that I watched about a year ago of a tarmac in Congo, in DRC, where foreign companies were exploiting minerals and taking off right from dusty runways in the in there. And I sent that video to one of my friends in Cameroon. I don't want to mention his name, but very brilliant guy, very lateral mind. And he responded with a comment. He said, the Westerners have been stealing minerals from Africa for about 400 years, and those minerals are not even close to being finished. Well, I kind of thought about that and sort of extended that thought, that the real minerals in Africa are not the minerals we touch. The real minerals in Africa are the African people. The African people are the ones who are going to change Africa and revolutionize our future. Case in point, the internet. If you are listening, Google Philip Emeagwali. Philip Emeagwali is a Nigerian physicist and mathematician who helped bring the internet to fruition. Bill Clinton even decorated him at the White House because of the work he did to bring forth the internet. Why am I bringing forth this? Because of Ambazonia and because of where Ambazonia sits. When the last military leadership handed over in Nigeria, Nigeria's economy was about $250 to $300 billion. When Goodluck Jonathan took over power in Nigeria, within a few years, just prior to Ebola, the Nigerian economy had surpassed the South African economy as the largest economy on the African continent. It was at that time north of $500 billion. And now it's approaching towards $1 trillion. What has that got to do with Ambazonia? We are sitting right next to Nigeria, and not just right next to Nigeria, but we are sitting on the Trans-African Highway. So all the traffic that is going to be going from West Africa, from this giant in Africa called Nigeria, from this great aircraft carrier called Nigeria that is taking its time to turn its history around, all of that traffic between West Africa and Central Africa is going to be going through where? Ambazonia. Welcome to the struggle for Ambazonia. Ambazonia is the pearl that sits right there. What other development is happening in Africa to further strengthen this point? We are now having about 8 countries in Africa, in East Africa, coalesce into this giant economic union called the East African Community, where they are blending into a political union, having a single currency. So we have Nigeria on one side, we have the East African Community on the other side, with all of that traffic going through Ambazonia. Hello, if you're watching and you're not yet supporting this struggle, if you're watching and you're not yet giving your all to make sure that an independent Ambazonia emerges, if you're watching and you're sitting on resources and you think Ambazonia is some backward dungeon that has no future, that is just characterized by bloodshed, remember that before this struggle started, people from eastern Nigeria, especially Igbos, were already buying land in Bamenda, in Bali, in Manfe, and all of these areas to build their warehouses, because they had already foreseen or did foresee this traffic moving between West Africa and East Africa. So it is time for you who is watching to put in your mind. It is time for you who is watching to contribute to the interim government. It is time for you who is watching to contribute in any way you can, so that sooner than later we can free Ambazonia. And these great happenings that are happening east of Ambazonia and west of Ambazonia will catapult Ambazonia to a glorious land in Africa. It is Ambazonia's future. Whatever just happened in Nigeria in the continuation of democratic and capitalist rule, and whatever is happening in East Africa is only more justification to fuel that fire in us, to free our land, so that we can take a rightful place, not just as the country that hinges in the Gulf of Guinea, but as that central point on the Trans-African Highway between the economic force in West Africa and the emerging economic force in Eastern and Southern Africa. Long live Ambazonia.
That was good.
Be free. Thank you, Paddy.
I don't
Thank
think
you, Paddy.
would have been any better way to conclude this amazing educational program. I want to thank you all, gentlemen, for amidst your very busy schedule for creating the time to serve your people in this critical day. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our audience, Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen, everyone who has been watching. You've heard that whatever is happening there is an opportunity for Ambazonia to listen to it, look at it, and to make gains. So, what are we doing as a people? My question to you: have you drafted for the federal government? Last Saturday, some Ambazonians who believe that we deserve a right to have a nation of our own came together and put together close to 30,000 US dollars, and it's still counting. The bank accounts are still open. The payment details are flying right now at your screen. If you look below, they are there. Have you donated? What are you going to tell your children tomorrow in future? What will go down history when your name is mentioned? That you watched and did nothing and folded your arms and you were looking at it? You've heard the people power. The people power is not talking and making noise all around the place. The people power is not all about rioting or protesting. The people power is also sponsoring a legitimate cause that will free the same people that you seek to advocate for. My question to you as I conclude tonight is that have you drafted for the federal government? If you haven't done so, you have a chance before we get into the next zone that is representing or that will be hosting the federal government. You have an opportunity to do so now. It is a dignity for you and your household to be a part of this project. You don't want to be absent. You don't want to be found as an enabler. Because if you are not for us, you're definitely against us. And even Bible says that a man's giving can be determined. Where a man's heart is giving will be directed towards it. So where is your heart? Do you believe in Ambazonia? Do you believe that the nation of Ambazonia will ever exist? If you believe in Ambazonia the way I do, if you believe in Ambazonia the way the president of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia so believes in it, if you believe in Ambazonia like this gentleman who have spent at least 3 hours tonight to educate our nation, if you believe in Ambazonia like the vice president, like Madame Iringwa, like cabinet members, like all the county chairs, if you believe in Ambazonia like Sagon, who has put his life at stake to ensure that the land is free, today is your opportunity. Now is your opportunity to make sure that you're a part of this project. And you know what to do. Just visit any of the websites there. If you're doubting exactly what to do, write us at info@abcambertv.com and we will reply you with every detail that is needed to make sure that you are a part of the winning team. Until next time, I'm Tarh Paddy. Have a great night.
BBC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.
Get trained as an IT professional from the comfort of your home. Dynamic Tech Academy gives you a unique opportunity through our 6-month program, during which you learn skills to transition to being a full-time IT professional. Over 80% of our students have no prior IT background, yet the vast majority of them land jobs a month after they start applying. Our ultimate goal is to reach 100% student placement, so we work with every student until he or she gets a job. Upon successful completion of the course, we will give you a resume, interview preps, one-on-one coaching from experienced instructors, and job placement assistance. Within this course, you get more than 300 hours of theories combined with real-world applications and practical skills you can apply on day one on your job. At the end of the program, our students can be certified as Red Hat Systems Administrator, AWS Cloud Engineer, AWS Security Specialist. Visit our website at www.dynamictechacademy.com to register.
We want to start by assuring all Ambazonians that your money is in safe hands, that no penny leaves the National Treasury unaccounted for. We want to talk about aid. What is aid? The EDNA, Ambazonia Independence Deal. So we replaced aid. Remember when the coup plotters took CID, our payment platforms? We wanted to come up with something that was very different so we don't get confused with them and us. So that's how we came with that word aid. As you've heard our president say, it does not matter what part of government you serve, local, county, or central government. You should be able to pay aid. Paying taxes to your country is compulsory. It's not negotiable. Whether you're in this government or you're not in this government. The brothers and sisters at home are paying for this with their blood. Our mothers are paying for it with ghost town days. What actually are we giving up? You all know that the world has turned its back on us, and we will rely on nobody else but ourselves. I want us to search our consciences and ask, are we doing enough? Are we actually here to support Ambazonia? Are we actually doing our all to make sure our country is free? Our goal is to make sure by the end of the year, or mid-year at least, we have had 1,000 people paying aid. Can you imagine, Mr. President, the person who carries this revolution on his shoulders, he pays $100 every month. We must also lead by example. So for all of you members of government, from cabinet to local government, who have subscribed on aid, we say thank you. Thank you so much. I hear some people say, oh, let's increase firepower on the home front. Increasing firepower on home front means we need more funds in the coffers. We see the world flocking to Ukraine, but no one is coming to our aid. It's up to us to say, yes, we can do this, with or without anyone. It's up to us to say we can become Somaliland tomorrow. Whether anyone recognizes us or not, we recognize ourselves as Ambazonians. And it only starts with our pocketbooks. It starts with all of us looking deep inside us. Remember this money is not going to Iringwa, it's not going to the president, it's going to those that are suffering in refugee camps. If you are out of home, for all of us in the diaspora, there is an opportunity to contribute to fund this government. If there is a will, there is a way. So I'm leaving you with one quote from J.F. Kennedy. He said, and I quote, "Don't ask what your country has done for you, but ask, what can I do for you?" So fellow brothers and sisters, fellow Ambazonians, don't ask what Ambazonia will do for you tomorrow. Don't ask what has Ambazonia done for me, but ask, what can I do for Ambazonia? How can I make this journey to be shorter so we can get home faster? It takes money. It takes our collective effort. It takes all of us to put our hands in our pockets, go deeper to say, I'm doing this for the freedom of my country. Remember this, those that are on home front, some of them have given their blood. We have mothers that have lost 3 children. We have mothers that don't have hope. We are their hope. Like President Obama said, hope that we believe in. So I hope today we look at ourselves. For those of you who have not paid it, if you have any questions, please, we have a fantastic team. We have Director Paddy, we have Chairman Amos, we have SG Peter, we have myself, we have Ma Victoria Yangi, and we are so proud to bring Comrade Abono on our team again. That way, our brother Chiclo, who was a very, very major partner in this program, is not here. But Comrade Abono will be coming in from the National Treasury to pull numbers on a daily basis, because we will be looking on these numbers on a daily basis. Thank you all again so much, and may God continue to strengthen us and change our mind from takers to givers. Long live the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, and short live the strong. Thank you.
The evil specter of rape, it crawls in the dark, its victims by stealth, it hacks. We saw it, we watched it. 11th February 2023. That night, the killer without a face broke brutally into the Ambazonians' consciousness, evoking hate and distaste. Its form was crude and callous. We were enraged, dismayed. Genocide was the topic that night. Like the executed, gathering minute details of his own execution, we listened to the horrid story that makes up our history, which, like a heavy cross, we keep dragging behind us. Tears welled up in our eyes, glistering like fireflies in the dead of night. Then suddenly, shrieks and loud wailing pierced through the silence, arresting our attention. An impromptu group surged to investigate. There were sobs. There were cries that cut through the heart. Then the young lady said, "I have been raped." A gasp went through the crowd and hung in the cloud. She stood in full view of all, a girl of 17, mother of a newborn child, still breastfeeding. She told of her fruitless efforts to beg the state's officer, a man fully clad in La République's state uniform, out in the field to protect the state's citizens, not to molest her, to listen to her concerns, and to respect her. But this state officer, a hyena in state uniform, an opportunist with no modicum of decency, grabbed and dragged his unwilling prey at gunpoint. into an inner office where a state senior officer was waiting. He raped her with a gun pointed at her head. This daughter of Ambazonia, her world closed in upon her. It came crashing down at her feet, her tears coursing down like a stream. This was death. She was inconsolable. Friends and sympathizers talked of calm. To a desolate child, her heart torn in the frantic effort to articulate her predicament. This woman was alone in her loneliness, the embodiment of a multitude of women the world over, silent victims of the horror of rape. Can they eradicate their wounds engraved in their hearts? Those graphic memories that hurt like jagged swords and cling like the stench. She had been made into a shadow. In her, we have met them all, the traumatized, the degraded, the humiliated victims of rape. The girl felt dirty, like a handbag drawn out of a pit latrine. Words to articulate the unexplainable escaped her. Sympathizers, there were in plenty. Yet alone she stood, her memories racing like mice on a clean floor and pulling her mind apart. Her own body had of a sudden turned into an object of hate. Her concept of society, now a valueless construct. Her destruction was complete. Threatened with death, she now lives with death. Gladly would she eradicate every sense of that loathsome experience to live again. Don't cry, they said. Ah, yes, let her belt it out for women's freedom's sake. She, the embodiment of millions of degraded women. Rape is the encounter that despoils a woman of all that she is. But be of good courage, daughter. The end is not yet. Ambazonia will never forget. God, your creator, knows you and your worth. He will visit you with joy and many others with you. By Ma Eli Jambelele.